Han Li's Wuxia Adventures. Chapter 2807. In everyone's opinion, a perfected yellow-rank Great Talisman Master in her early 50s had a limitless future. However, when Mu Roxuan made her move, everyone marveled at the fact that this young lady was actually able to take on 2 consecutive powerful attack talismans from a yellow-rank Great Talisman Master. Mu Roxuan pursed her lips, her face as dark as water. The defensive talisman array around her was made up of 24 jade talismans, emitting a faint jade luster. Defensive Jade Talisman Array. As expected of the Mu family's eldest miss. A Jade Talisman Array right off the bat. Opposite her, Jin Xiaoyang smiled at Mu Roxuan. Junior sister, you didn't draw this defensive Jade Talisman Array yourself. Even if you barely beat me, it's still an unfair victory. Zhongli Zi frowned slightly and said indifferently, Senior brother Jin, you're already 50 years old. Bullying a 17-year-old junior sister doesn't seem so honorable. Jin Xiaoyang's face darkened. Snickers sounded from the surroundings. Mu Roxuan cast a grateful look at Zhongli Zi. When she turned to face Jin Xiaoyang, she focused all her attention on dealing with him. She was only a mid-stage black rank Great Talisman Master and was far from perfected black rank. She definitely wouldn't be able to take on the opponent's attack talismans. Therefore, the defensive Jade Talisman Array she was using right now was made by 7th Uncle Mu Jingrui. However, she had used this Jade Talisman Array many times before. She didn't know if it could block Jin Xiaoyang's attack talismans, which were getting stronger and stronger each time. Junior sister, this is the last attack. Pay attention. Jin Xiaoyang smiled smugly and suddenly waved his right hand. A jade talisman flew toward Mu Roxuan at lightning speed and arrived in front of her with a whoosh. The light from the attack shone brightly. Mu Roxuan was knocked back more than 10 meters by the attack. Her feet dragged out 2 long white marks on the ground as she coughed and spat out a small mouthful of blood. Blood trickled from the corner of her mouth, but her eyes were filled with an unyielding gaze. Her body stiffened as she stood firmly. In less than 3 seconds, he spat out another mouthful of blood. Mu Xingqian leaped in front of her and hurriedly reached out to support her. He turned around and coldly looked at Jin Xiaoyang, saying in a deep voice, Surname Jin, if you want to compete, just come at me. Bullying a new student, what kind of hero are you? When everyone saw that Mu Roxuan was beaten to the point of vomiting blood, a trace of sympathy immediately appeared in their eyes. This Jin Xiaoyang was going too far. Moreover, Mu Roxuan herself was not weak. She was able to withstand 2 of Jin Xiaoyang's attacks at such a young age. It was not easy for Mu Roxuan to stand up straight under such a fierce attack for the 3rd time. Compared to Jin Xiaoyang's pressing step by step, Miss Mu seemed to have the demeanor of a large sect. It was a glorious defeat. Jin Xiaoyang forced a smile and said, Senior brother Mu, you're not thinking of standing up for your younger sister, are you? Why not? Mu Xingqian sneered. As a member of the Mu family, how could he be a coward who could watch outsiders bully his Mu family? Big brother. Mu Roxuan pressed his hand, coughed a few times, and pulled him back. She was not as skilled as him, so she had to admit defeat. A complicated light flashed through Mu Roxuan's eyes. Being slapped in the face on the first day of school was tantamount to ringing an alarm bell in her ears. In the past, when they competed in the family, others did not dare to kill her because of her status. Chapter 2808. However, that didn't mean that there wasn't anyone in the younger generation who could defeat her. Perhaps there was always someone better out there. There were also some hidden talents in the family who might not necessarily be inferior to her. She had been too arrogant in the past. Cough, cough, cough. Mu Roxuan looked coldly at Jin Xiaoyang. At this moment, there was a subtle change in her state of mind. With Mu Xingqian's support, Mu Roxuan straightened her back and wiped the blood from her mouth with her sleeve. I lost. She sneered. But when I'm 50, I might not lose to you. Everyone was stunned and couldn't help but snicker. Wasn't that right? Miss Mu had just turned 17 and already had the ability to fight Jin Zhaoyang. In another 30 years or so, with Miss Mu's talisman aptitude, she would most likely surpass Jin Zhaoyang and crush him. Jin Zhaoyang's face darkened again. His mouth twitched, and he said with a fake smile, I heard that a heaven-level great talisman master appeared in your Mu family in the past 300 years. A hint of anger appeared in Mu Xingqian's eyes. Jin Zhaoyang chuckled. I heard his name is Mu Zhaoyang, your patriarch Zhaoyang. Ha ha ha, I'm Jin Zhaoyang, and he's Mu Zhaoyang. Do you think I'll be like your patriarch Zhaoyang in the future, with a bright future that can't be underestimated? Ha ha ha. How dare you? Mu Rochuan trembled with anger. This person actually verbally took advantage of their Mu family. How dare he dream of being on par with their patriarch Zhaoyang with his cowardly appearance? How preposterous! Jin Zhaoyang waved his hand and said with a smile, I heard that your Mu family has 2 new students entering the school this year. Why don't I see the other one? Could it be that he's too scared to come out? The young masters from the Qin estate, the 2 from the Dou family, and the disciples from the aristocratic families of the divine province couldn't help but roll their eyes at the same time. Here it comes again, it hasn't even been 2 minutes, and he's courting death again. The scene of the little girl releasing the sand scorpion yesterday was still floating in front of their eyes. Today, there's someone courting death again. The group of students silently took a few steps back, leaving a large circle in the middle to let Jin Zhaoyang's heart's desire. They didn't want the innocent to be implicated. Arbor frowned and walked to Mu Xingqian and Mu Rochuan's side. He stared at Jin Zhaoyang with a bone-chilling gaze. Why are you being so long-winded? From the very beginning, this person had been noisy to no end. Arbor expressed that her patience had long since run out. Jin Zhaoyang's face was cold as he stared at the little girl who was like a jade statue. The corner of his mouth twitched, and he once again revealed that infuriating smile. You're the other newly admitted Mu clan disciple. Arbor didn't deny it or admit it. He just looked at him coldly and asked, do you want to die? Everyone was speechless. Jin Zhaoyang clearly didn't understand his current situation. He frowned and said with displeasure, little girl, please be more polite. You don't have to be polite to a dog of the Sun Moon Temple. As soon as these words came out, the entire crowd couldn't help but go into an uproar. Everyone's gaze shifted to the Holy Sun, who was standing silently at the side. Holy Sun Mi Yan was obviously slightly taken aback, and then he said coldly, you probably misunderstood. I didn't misunderstand. Arbor interrupted the Holy Sun without allowing him to explain. Chapter 2809. The little fellow said indifferently, this dog of yours knows how to look at its master's face the moment it appears. In the process of fighting with Mu Rochuan, it looked at your master's face 3 times in a row. Since you were targeting me from the beginning, why use the Mu clan's name? The little girl mocked him politely, don't you know my relationship with the Mu clan? Why use the Mu clan as a fig leaf? Then come at me, be a bit more open and aboveboard. When the little girl retorted, she was used to firing off a torrent, sweeping away her usual quiet appearance. Prince Mo was very happy to see this. The little girl was so energetic. But as the one being rebuked, he was so depressed that he wanted to die. Holy Sun Mi Yan's expression was already extremely ugly as he coldly swept a glance at a priest beside him. That priest hurriedly stepped forward and explained in a deep voice, little girl, I'm afraid you've misunderstood. This is a private matter between your Imperial Academy students, why drag our Sun Moon Temple into it? Whether it is or not, you know in your heart. Arbor raised his hand to interrupt him and turned to look at Jin Zhaoyang, you're called Jin Zhaoyang? That's right. Jin Zhaoyang raised his chin high, his face insufferably arrogant. Do you think your bug-like appearance is comparable to old ancestor Zhaoyang? Bug-like appearance? Jin Xiaoyang glared at Arbor in annoyance, his face instantly turning green. This little girl had guts, actually calling him a bug-like appearance. Arbor didn't give him a chance to question and just continued with a sneer, "Don't you know what kind of person Mu Xiaoyang is? The talisman array drawn by old ancestor Xiaoyang 300 years ago can still be used today. Can you do it? You know what kind of bug-like appearance you are. You're obviously a bug, yet you want to be shoulder to shoulder with the sun. Simply ridiculous, you have no self-awareness." Jin Xiaoyang was so angry that his hair stood on end. Good. If he didn't teach this audacious girl a lesson today, how could he continue to establish himself in the Imperial Academy? What's so good about it? Arbor looked at Jin Xiaoyang as if he was looking at an idiot. His cold gaze swept across Jin Xiaoyang's swollen face. With a slight movement of her finger, a jade talisman with flowing light appeared in her slender white palm. The little girl said expressionlessly, "If you can take this jade talisman of mine, then I will give it to you. Take it as my loss." Arbor said coldly, "If you can't take it, then immediately change your name to Golden Dog and get out of the royal school. Do you dare to bet?" Jin Xiaoyang was so angry that he clenched his fists and shouted angrily, You, ha. How arrogant. Just by relying on an offensive jade talisman, he was trying in vain to make a yellow rank great talisman master like him unable to receive it. Ha. What a joke. Little girl, the world doesn't revolve around you. Of course the world doesn't revolve around me, Arbor said coldly. There's always someone better than you. Even a 3-year-old child knows this. But against you. Arbor looked down indifferently at the jade talisman in her hand and coldly spat out 3 words, "Enough." You. Jin Xiaoyang shouted angrily, "Good. Today, if I can't take this offensive jade talisman of yours, my name Jin Xiaoyang will be read backwards from now on. Yang Xiaojin." Arbor nodded, "That's a phrase, remember it." Chapter 28:10. Jin Xiaoyang's expression was extremely unsightly. Today's matter had turned out like this, it could not be considered amicable. A trace of murderous intent flitted across his eyes. What if I accept? I don't want your apology, I want your right hand. Do you dare to bet? Jin Xiaoyang's eyes were full of provocation, anticipating that the little girl would not dare to accept this bet. How dare you? Yun Piaomiao angrily rebuked. A trace of mockery flashed across Mo Lian's eyes, and she said faintly, "Dean Yun, don't worry. He won't be able to jump around for long." Dean Yun was really anxious. He knew Jin Xiaoyang's strength very well. At the little girl's age and coming up from the lower realm, it was already not bad for her to reach the advanced level perfected talisman master level that Mu Jingrui had mentioned. This wager with one hand was no joke. How would a talisman master draw talismans in the future if he lost a hand? These young children were too impulsive. If it was a normal competition of cultivation, even if the little girl's cultivation was insufficient, she would not lose to Jin Xiaoyang by too much with Sand Scorpion's help. But now, it was a competition of talisman power. Mu Roxuan could become a yellow-level talisman master at the age of 17 because she had an innate advantage, and the entire talisman family in the Divine Continent had contributed greatly to her cultivation. But the little girl was someone who had just come up from the lower star region. It was hard to believe that she had the power to fight Jin Xiaoyang. Cut the crap, take it. How could Arbor have the patience to continue chattering with Jin Xiaoyang? She directly raised her white hand, and a jade-white stream of light flew towards Jin Xiaoyang. A cold sneer hung on Jin Xiaoyang's lips as he raised his hand and swept the air in front of him. 24 defensive jade talismans jumped out and emitted white light in front of him. They suddenly formed a circle, enveloping his entire person in a defensive jade talisman array. The talisman masters could see that a transparent barrier had been erected around Jin Xiaoyang. It was like a safety shield, enclosing him within it. Just with that offensive jade talisman. It was absolutely impossible to break through this yellow-level defensive jade talisman array. The talisman masters could not help but sigh and shake their heads. The little girl was too naive. How could an offensive jade talisman be enough to deal with a yellow-level perfected talisman master? Even if they formed an offensive jade talisman array, they might not be able to break through the opponent's defensive talisman array. The difference was too great. Boom! A deafening sound suddenly rang out, and even the ground here was trembling from the mighty force of the attack. Cough, cough, cough. Everyone waved their hands and brushed away the faint white mist in front of them. Surprisingly, Jin Xiaoyang was actually forced to retreat several steps by the power of the jade talisman. You've lost. Jin Xiaoyang glared angrily. He was secretly surprised. He didn't expect the little girl's offensive jade talisman to have such power. Fortunately, his defensive array glyphs were strong enough to resist the attack. As a result, clear cracks appeared on his talisman array. Jin Xiaoyang secretly heaved a sigh of relief. His face was saved. Next, he just needed to withstand the pressure and make this arrogant little girl cripple her own right arm. You're too naive. Arbor's cold voice entered his ears. Following that, an even more powerful wave of attacks rushed out from the jade talisman and landed on his body. What? Everyone looked at the jade talisman suspended in midair with shocked expressions. The third, fourth, and fifth wave of attacks broke through the wind and waves. Chapter 28:11. The rumbling sound of the impact was incessant. When blocking the second wave of attacks, Jin Xiaoyang barely managed to use the second set of backup defensive talisman arrays. Unfortunately, this set of defensive talisman arrays was obviously not as useful as the previous set of talisman arrays, and it was instantly destroyed by the attack talisman power. The talisman power hit his left shoulder, and Jin Xiaoyang's entire body swayed backward. When the third wave of attacks came, Jin Xiaoyang's expression changed greatly, and he could only activate the defensive ring on his body to block it. At this point, he had clearly lost. Since it was a talisman competition, he was obviously defeated now that he had used other aids. However, at that critical moment, he really couldn't care too much about saving his life. With great difficulty, he managed to block the attacks in a flurry. The fourth and fifth waves of attacks came majestically. For a moment, the entire practice field was silent, and even a pin drop could be heard. Everyone inexplicably held their breaths as they watched the scene before them, almost forgetting to speak. Mu Xingchen was especially shocked. As the saying went, the layman only watched the show, while the expert could see the knack. In the eyes of other laymen, they only felt waves of talisman power stronger than the previous wave, blowing strong winds from the side and landing heavily on Jin Xiaoyang's defensive barrier. And in the eyes of Mu Xingchen and Mu Roxuan, what they noticed even more was that the jade talisman that the little girl flicked out continuously released 5 waves of attacks. If in a real battle, throwing out such a number of jade talismans would be so terrifying that it would make one's hair stand on end. Mu Roxuan's eyes were wide open. She recalled the first time she saw the little girl in the corridor. She held a blue storage talisman in her hand, and even Ruyan coveted that blue talisman in her hand, wanting to take it for herself. Could it be that she really was a talisman master? But, was that possible? Mu Roxuan's expression turned somewhat ugly for a moment. She was somewhat unable to believe that a girl who grew up outside the Mu family would have better talisman skills than her. After all, the two of them didn't really compete at that time in the corridor. The result of the competition was left undecided in a ridiculous way. After that, Mu Roxuan subconsciously forgot about this matter, and was blindly excited as she drew a yellow storage talisman in the corridor. Because of this, she was even praised by her grandfather and admired by her family. Moreover, just like earlier, wasn't Arbor not joining the talisman hall precisely because she was afraid of this genius talisman eldest young miss, and didn't want her edge to be overshadowed by her. She had always been confident in her talisman skills. He didn't expect to receive so many blows today. Moreover, watching Arbor defeat Jin Zhaoyang was even more painful than losing to Jin Zhaoyang herself. After all, she didn't feel guilty about losing to Jin Zhaoyang. She was much younger than Jin Zhaoyang, so wasn't it normal for her to lose? And if Arbor could easily defeat Jin Zhaoyang, how would others view her, the genius eldest young miss of a talisman aristocratic family? They would definitely say that she, the genius first miss of the Divine Land's talisman aristocratic family, was actually inferior to a little girl who had been wandering outside the Mu family for many years. Mu Rochuan's fingers curled up tightly. Her state of mind underwent a subtle change once again. She had always thought that at her age, there was basically no one who could match up to her in terms of talisman skills. But now, reality slapped her in the face. Someone had surpassed her, and was actually a year younger than her. Chapter 28:12. Just now, she felt that she couldn't be too arrogant and had to broaden her horizons. Among the younger generation of the family, there might be someone more outstanding than her, right? But this might not necessarily include Xiao Mu at all right. She simply could not accept that Xiao Mu had surpassed her, Mu Rochuan. It was much better for anyone to surpass her than Arbor. How could she allow Arbor to surpass her? Mu Rochuan seemed to see the disappointment in her parents' eyes when they looked at her. They had painstakingly nurtured a beautiful daughter who was already inferior to others in terms of looks. At this moment, even the talisman art that the family had always been proud of was far inferior to others. Mu Rochuan's face turned deathly pale from the huge blow she received. When she stole a glance at her brother beside her, she felt a piercing pain in her heart. At this moment, eldest brother's bright gaze was completely focused on Xiao Mu. In his eyes, there was only Arbor. That girl was his most outstanding younger sister. She had completely lost herself. Did this mean that in the future, her father, grandfather, uncles, and even everyone in the family would lose sight of her, Mu Rochuan, and only Arbor? Crack. An almost inaudible shattering sound made her heart sink. She instantly came back to her senses. Mu Rochuan lowered her eyes, her face slightly distorted. Just now, a crack had appeared in her Dantian's spiritual ruin realm. It actually caused the spiritual ruin realm to shatter because of the sudden impact on her mental state. Mu Rochuan felt as if she had been struck by lightning. Jin Zhaoyang's setback wasn't any better than hers. Jin Zhaoyang had never expected that he would lose. At this moment, he was still in a daze. He sat paralyzed on the ground, not knowing what had happened. The fourth wave of attacks had broken 2 ribs in his chest. How could he dare to resist the 5th wave of attacks? Although he had avoided it, the deep pit behind him repeatedly indicated that he had lost. He had lost. He had lost completely in front of everyone. He had lost all his dignity. He subconsciously looked in the direction of Holy Sun Mi Yen. The Holy Sun's handsome face was dark and gloomy. He pursed his lips tightly. Although he didn't say anything, the suppressed displeasure in his eyes was obvious. She originally wanted to find someone to slap her in the face and teach the stoic face a good lesson, but in the end, things completely went against her wishes. The little stoic coldly glanced at Jin Chaoyang and said dryly, "Yang Chao Jin, you must accept your loss. Get out of the Imperial Academy immediately." Yang Chao Jin. Everyone silently looked at Jin Chaoyang, who was paralyzed on the ground. The little girl immediately read the other party's name upside down. Alright, since he lost the bet, Jin Zhaoyang could only accept it. You, don't go too far. Jin Zhaoyang's face darkened, and his lips trembled as he spoke. The little stoic immediately looked at Headmaster Yun impatiently. Why are all the students in your academy so unreasonable? He was the one who wanted to challenge me, and now he's the one who refuses to admit defeat. How can you have the face to be my classmate with such a vile character? Why aren't you telling him to get the hell out of my sight? If you continue to be long-winded, I'll kill you. The little stoic's patience was completely exhausted. Her black eyes coldly glanced at Jin Zhaoyang. Do you understand? Jin Zhaoyang shuddered, and his entire body quivered. He looked pleadingly at Headmaster Yun beside him. Headmaster Yun expressed that he wanted to help, but was unable to. Chapter 28:13. Headmaster Yun was truly powerless. From yesterday until today, how many jokes had he caused by challenging the little stoic? Could anyone with a discerning eye not tell? How awesome you thought you were earlier was how much of a slap to your face now. Didn't you see so many students looking at you with sympathetic gazes? You truly couldn't be stopped from courting death. Jin Zhaoyang saw the headmaster's strange gaze. He clearly didn't plan on helping him. He hesitated for a second before suddenly pointing at Arbor and shouting, "She cheated. Headmaster, she cheated. She definitely threw out 5 offensive jade talismans just now. Didn't everyone see it with their own eyes? Just now, I received 5 attacks. A total of 5. Jin Zhaoyang stretched out 5 fingers in a final struggle and jumped up to shout harshly. Cough cough cough. Because 2 of his ribs were broken, his lungs sucked in another burst of cold air from his shouting. It hurt so much that cold sweat dripped down his forehead, and he coughed violently. He could only slowly lower the speed and volume of his speech. As everyone knows, an offensive jade talisman can only release 1 attack, but just now, a frog at the bottom of a well, ignorant and ill-informed. Arbor coldly interrupted his noisy speech and swept him an indifferent glance. You haven't seen it before, he hasn't seen it before, and everyone hasn't seen it before, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist in this world. You should go and understand how big the world is. The little stoic angrily rebuked the old man in front of her. She didn't give him any face at all. This is a multi-attack jade talisman. The little stoic had always been too lazy to explain, but now, she felt the need to have a good talk with this ignorant and ill-informed fellow. With my current ability, I can only inscribe 5. But the ancestor Chao Yang you slandered previously, he once inscribed 7. 7-level offensive talismans. Have you heard of it? Everyone was stupefied. Everyone, including Mu Xingchen and Mu Roxuan, looked at the little lady in front of them as if they were listening to a fantasy story. How did you know? Mu Roxuan asked in a trembling voice. The tip of her heart started to tremble along with it. Could it be that the little girl had the opportunity to learn the art of talisman from old ancestor Zhaoyang? If that was the case, then her strange and unfathomable talisman technique would make sense. Arbor naturally wouldn't explain it to Mu Roxuan. Because the topic that was brought up was a long time ago. The Holy Water Sect's old sect master was Mu Zhaoyang's best friend despite their age difference. She had heard a lot about Mu Zhaoyang's life stories during their casual chats. However, at that time, she still didn't know that this old man was her ancestor. She only felt that this old man's natural disposition was heroic, candid, and magnanimous. Moreover, his talisman technique was superb, and his character and cultivation were extremely admirable. Just now, Jin Zhaoyang dared to slander and defame her idol. This was naturally intolerable. It wasn't that she had to stand up for Mu Roxuan. She did not care about what Mu Roxuan was like. It was just that no one dared to insult the idol that she had admired since she was young. Her small hand slid over the white jade bracelet engraved with green bamboo on her wrist. The talisman matrix that old ancestor Zhaoyang left behind at the Maple Pavilion 300 years ago helped the Holy Water Sect preserve the entire Maple Pavilion during the 6 prefectures invasion. With such boldness and ability, he was not only a master of his generation, but also a grandmaster of his generation. How could Jin Zhaoyang, this stinking bug, be mentioned in the same breath as him? He wasn't even fit to carry his shoes. Chapter 28:14. Arbor looked coldly at Jin Zhaoyang, who was sitting on the ground. His gaze swept across Jin Zhaoyang's face. Do you think that a jade talisman can only be used for one purpose? Attack or defense? It was a big mistake. Ever since the 9th jade talisman of the Golden Talisman Jade Tome was activated, her actual talisman drawing skills had advanced from the black level complete circle to the earth level entry stage. A small yellow level talisman master jumping in front of her, wasn't it just a matter of being slapped? Xiao Mu couldn't be bothered to continue speaking, so she turned around and stomped towards Mo Lien. Hurry and get out of here. That Yang Zhaojin, I don't even want to look at him. A trace of anger flashed across Jin Zhaoyang's eyes. He struggled to stand up, still wanting to argue with Arbor and the others. Principal Yun sighed and waved his hand to let someone take him away. Jin Zhaoyang's argument was really laughable. Just now, everyone was not blind. Everyone saw that from the beginning to the end, Jin Zhaoyang was attacked by only one jade talisman. Where did the 5 jade talismans come from? When Jin Zhaoyang was taken away, he still angrily yelled twice, unwilling to submit. Until he was dragged out of the practice field, that ear-piercing sound finally stopped. Mo Lien's cold eyes calmly swept towards the direction Jin Zhaoyang left. Her eyes were abnormally cold and her fingertips quickly swiped under her sleeves. The word bind was left on the jade talisman. At the same time, a group of hidden guards outside the royal school received the crown prince's instructions. When Jin Zhaoyang was pushed out of the royal school, the big gift that greeted him was a snow-white flash of sword light. Tian Yun's people have even infiltrated the royal school. On the way back to Winter Forest Court, Arbor frowned and said. Perhaps without them knowing, Tian Yun had already infiltrated the big families of the 3 continents. He thought of the corpse puppet that appeared in the Mu family's backyard. Xiao Mu creased her brows. Could it be that there were also people from Tian Yun in the Mu family? Could Shi Huixin be related to Tian Yun? If that's the case, doesn't that mean that Tian Yun's people have been lurking in the Mu family for at least 10 years? They returned to Donglin Garden, changed their clothes, and had dinner. After a while, Holy Sun Mi Yen and the others also came back. They glanced at Arbor coldly. Arbor raised the corners of his mouth. Holy Sun Mi Yen actually came back. She had really underestimated how thick-skinned this Holy Sun was. Both sides had already shed all pretense of cordiality, yet he could still bring his men back to Donglin Garden as if nothing had happened. I have already paid the fee. Holy Sun Mayan said angrily and led his men to his unfinished house. He had already paid for 5 days of accommodation. No matter what, he had to make up for it. The little stoic and her companions looked at each other in dismay. For some reason, they felt that this lofty Sir Holy Sun seemed to be a bit down to earth. An hour later, a message was delivered to Holy Sun Mayan. My lord, Jin Zhaoyang has been taken care of. Holy Sun Mayan smashed a small square table into pieces with a slap. The priest accompanying him on the side couldn't help but twitch his eyelids. Heavens, Sir Holy Sun smashed the only table in the house that could hold a tea set. The enemy was even more powerful than he had imagined. That damn crown prince of the divine province, this black-hearted and merciless guy. He must have secretly sent people to take care of Jin Zhaoyang. Chapter 28:15. Damn it, Jin Zhaoyang was actually of some use. After all, he was already a yellow-level talisman practitioner. Where is he? Holy Sun Mi Yen asked solemnly. The corpse can't be found anymore. The air rippled slightly. A man wearing a white robe and a white scarf that only revealed his eyes stood next to Holy Sun Mi Yen and reported with his head bowed. Damn it. Holy Sun Mi Yen cursed again. The teacup in his hand cracked with a soft shattering sound before ultimately shattering into powder. The tea dripped down Mi Yan's palm and dripped onto the floor. The priests in the room didn't even dare to breathe loudly. It would be fine if Jin Zhaoyang's corpse didn't even exist, but if that corpse was taken back for research. Holy Sun Mi Yen creased his brows and thought, the crown prince of the divine province shouldn't be so troublesome. He must have sent people to clean up that punk. Are you sure he's dead? Yes. That white-robed man nodded submissively. There are still many bloodstains on the ground. Judging from the amount of blood, he was destined to die. Holy Sun Mi Yen coldly said, they're all useless people. Holy Sun, then what should we do next? A priest quickly fawned over him. Don't tell me we're going to let that little stoic continue running rampant like this. Let her be happy for a few days first. Holy Sun Mi Yen snorted. When we enter the Sun-Moon mystery realm, she'll be in big trouble. On the other side, Prince Mo glanced at the little fellow who was already sound asleep. He stroked her face with his fingers before leaving in the middle of the night. However, just as he reached Donglin Park's entrance, he discovered a tall black figure leaning against the wall, seemingly waiting for him for a long time. Mo Lien rolled her eyes. What? You did it. Our dear Duan Yu jumped out from the corner and sized him up in confusion. It's the middle of the night. Why didn't you change your clothes before going out? He was still wearing the snow-white academy uniform from the day. It was so white that it reflected light in the night. Mo Lien silently glanced at Duan Yu, who was wearing a black skin-tight suit. You were a thief. I followed you. What an annoying fellow. Crown Prince Mo grumpily glared at him again. Are you sure you want to meddle in this matter? That's right, it's everyone's responsibility to deal with an organization like Tianyun, isn't it? Every man has his own responsibility. He's just harboring ill intentions towards my wife. Crown Prince Mo harumphed before turning around, his figure flitting into the night. Duan Yu naturally hurried to catch up, and he even commented rather noisily, I went out to take a look just now, and the scene was filled with blood and minced meat. What the hell is that? Since Jin Zhaoyang was not dead, it meant that the things on the ground were not him. The minced meat is naturally his. Mo Lien coldly curled her lips. Anyway, it was fine as long as he didn't die completely. As for blood, just add some chicken blood to it. By making the scene a little more disgusting, they would naturally be able to fool everyone. Is it Jin Zhaoyang's life lantern? It's with me. Mo Lien said faintly, just block his life lantern. Holy Sun Mi Yen shouldn't be able to sense this person at all now. This person was still so cautious when doing things, Duan Yu inwardly thought. Holy Sun Mi Yen truly had 8 lifetimes of bad luck to be enemies with this person. Those who want to harm my Jojo naturally have to pay the corresponding price. Mo Lien only summoned Little Seven when they were far away from the academy. Chapter 28:16. The two swiftly rode the dragon and stealthily arrived at the southern side of north-facing Great Forest under the cover of the night. They followed the Jade Messenger talisman to a valley. Duan Yu was a bit unsettled. This punk had only been here for 2 days, yet he had already found a place to contact and settle down. From the looks of it, he had already sent people to settle down in this small valley. This small valley was hidden in the southern side of north-facing Great Forest. The valley entrance was usually filled with miasma and poisonous insects, so people rarely came here. Duan Yu looked at the stone tablet erected at the valley entrance. The 2 words, north-facing, had already peeled off and become unrecognizable. The stone tablet had been worn down with the passage of time, as if someone had lived here several hundred years ago. North-facing valley. Duan Yu's puzzled gaze swept towards Mo Lien. The latter nodded slightly. This north-facing valley entrance is protected by a talisman matrix, so it's quite hidden. I sent people in to take a look. Someone should have lived here before. However, there hasn't been anyone living here for the past few decades. I think this place is a bit small, but it's not a bad place to settle down temporarily, so I had some people move in and stay nearby. Duan Yu, You planted so many people here in north-facing Great Forest, but did you inform the nearby mercenary groups? Mo Lien gave him a, you still need to inform them, look. Duan Yu thought it made sense. With this guy's personality, he would probably eliminate anyone who came to provoke him. What was the point of informing them? North-facing Great Forest was a large dye vat where the strong preyed on the weak to begin with. There were all sorts of factions here, so it was inevitable that Prince Mo would attract covetous eyes when he brought people to settle down in the southern side. It was normal for him to be targeted. Thankfully, we haven't been stationed here for long. The nearby large level 5 and level 6 mercenary groups should still be observing for now. The other small gangs don't have much of an impact on us. As they spoke, the two had already entered the small valley under the guidance of a black-clothed youth and headed straight for the dungeon. This dungeon was actually a converted cave. 2 rows of torches hung on the walls on both sides, illuminating the inside of the cave. Huifeng walked up and saluted Prince Mo and Duan Yu with a chuckle. Your Highness, we've already properly greeted them, but they couldn't confess anything. It seems they really don't know anything. However, we did find a strange person in the prison. Huh? Mo Lien stopped in her tracks. Weirdo. Duan Yu also couldn't resist asking curiously, what, did you discover that there were still survivors in the prison when you garrisoned it? Yes. Huifeng nodded vigorously. We also find it very strange that this is actually a living person. Mo Lien and Duan Yu were taken aback, but their interest was immediately piqued. Let's go take a look. Huifeng led the two of them past a cage made of wooden fences and into the innermost part of the dungeon. Separated by the thick and solid fences, they gazed at the black shadow lying in the corner. Duan Yu walked up and knocked on the fence several times. Hey! The black shadow didn't react at all. It just lay there motionless. Someone went in. Tong went in just now. The two of them turned to look at Tong, who was following behind them like a shadow. The latter stepped forward and reported, this subordinate discovered that this person is somewhat mystical. The tendons in his arms and legs were clearly snapped, and he was so hungry that he was only skin and bones, but he was indeed alive. Let's go in and take a look, Duan Yu said. Huifeng opened the prison door, and the group quickly walked inside. Chapter 28:17. He's not pretending, right? Duan Yu walked up with a grin. He looked unconcerned, but he was actually on full alert. He casually took a rod from Huifeng and slowly flipped over the shadow in the corner. That person flipped over and faced the sky. His empty eyes exuded a hint of lifelessness as he stared fixedly at them. Strictly speaking, he really couldn't be considered looking at them because he was clearly blind. Who are you? The Crown Prince asked. Your Highness, he's a mute. Sir Su has already examined him. Tong whispered, not only are the meridians in his limbs severed, but he's also deaf, mute, and blind. Mo Lien involuntarily creased her brows. This was too inconceivable. You're certain he lived here alone for several decades? Tong nodded. According to the traces here, that is indeed the case. So this person was deaf, blind, and mute, and had been paralyzed here for several decades? How did he survive? Duan Yu was perplexed. He relied on medicinal liquid to survive. A voice came from outside the bars. A middle-aged man entered with him. He wore a cyan robe and looked very proper. Sir Su, what do you mean? Su Xuetao smiled faintly. Everyone, please follow me. Everyone followed Sir Su outside the prison cell. Sir Su pointed at the stone trough at the top of the cave and sighed. Many pills are stored there, and there's a very elaborate mechanism outside. According to my calculations, every 24 hours, a pill will be sent down from the stone trough. Oh. Realization dawned on Huifeng. That funnel below is for receiving pills. That's right. A hint of admiration involuntarily appeared in Sir Su's eyes. This should be the handiwork of an extremely outstanding mechanism master. There's also a container for draining rainwater on the side. Once the two are combined, it becomes a nutritious medicinal liquid. And that guy has been lying in that place all this time because he was imprisoned there. He can only helplessly wait for the medicinal liquid to fall from the sky every day. This medicinal liquid is truly good. Sir Su said, it doesn't need to be taken orally. It can be absorbed by the body through any inch of skin. Even if you can only maintain a half-dead state, it's impossible for you to have the strength to kill yourself. What a speechless life. He didn't know which damned master had come up with such a torturous punishment. Who knew what kind of thing that unlucky fellow had done to incur the wrath of the mechanical grandmaster engineer to seek revenge like this? He had stayed here for decades, neither dead nor alive. It was truly too tragic. Duan Yu and Mo Lien exchanged glances before suddenly asking with a chuckle, "Where's Jin Zhaoyang? Bring him here." Mo Lien was stunned for a moment, but she immediately understood. He nodded and said to Hui Feng, "Bring him over." Soon, Jin Zhaoyang was brought to this small prison cell. There wasn't a single piece of good flesh on this fellow's body, and his face was swollen like a pig's head. He looked at Mo Lien, Duan Yu, and the others in horror. The meaning in his eyes was as if he was looking at several demons. He probably never imagined that he would fall into such a miserable state in his life. If it was possible, he really wished he could turn back time. He wouldn't have accepted the mission of provoking and humiliating the little stoic even if he died. So regretful, so regretful. Unfortunately, there was no medicine for regret in life. What are you doing? Chapter 28:18. It was only after Jin Zhaoyang opened his mouth that he realized his voice was trembling. Cowardly, too cowardly. He, a grand yellow-rank great talisman practitioner, actually fell to this state. It was truly a case of a tiger being bullied by dogs when it fell to the plains. I confessed everything. Jin Zhaoyang's voice trembled as he said, it was Holy Sun Mi Yen who hired me. He wanted to take Miss Qiao down a notch. Do you see this person? Duan Yu interrupted Jin Zhaoyang with a grin, indicating for him to look at the pile of junk lying in the corner. The tendons in his arms and legs are all rotten, and he's all skin and bones, but he's not dead. Do you know why? Because the Crown Prince didn't want him to die so easily. Duan Yu blinked and said, "You also want to become like this person? I wonder if you can survive 30 years in this dungeon." Jin Zhaoyang's vision darkened. He only felt that life was hopeless, and his future was terrifyingly dark. He crumpled to the ground like a puddle of mud. He scrambled to the front of the two and confessed with tears and snot streaming down his face, "I really told you everything I know. I can swear that I'll tell you everything I know." "Oh. Then what about the heavenly fate?" A faint light flashed through Prince Mo's eyes. Jin Zhaoyang hastily wailed, I confess everything. You're talking about the faction behind Sir Holy Sun, right? Xiao Xiao really doesn't know. I am only a very peripheral member. If you didn't tell me today, I wouldn't even know that the organization behind Sir Holy Sun is called Tian Heavenly Fate. The two had been observing his expression while he was speaking, and they couldn't help but frown when they heard this. The two exchanged a look. Prince Mo, I used a dictum talisman on him. He can't lie in this state of mental breakdown, so he probably really doesn't know. Duan Yu, kill him. Deal with it, Crown Prince Mo said coldly. However, Jin Zhaoyang actually felt a sense of relief after hearing this. He would rather die than live for several decades like that pitiful person with crippled limbs. Your Highness, please wait. Teacher Su cupped his hands and said, I discovered an extremely strange constitution in this person's body. It seems to be some kind of medicine that has taken up residence in his body. His body is very strange. Mo Lien and Duan Yu looked at each other before turning to look at Mr. Su at the same time. They asked in unison, "Did you discover anything?" "For the time being, I can only extract some blood from this person's body for analysis and research." Mr. Su cupped his hands and said. Mo Lien explained to Duan Yu, "Sir Su has a certain level of research on formations, pills, and talismans. Since he said so, it means that there is indeed something strange about Jin Zhaoyang's body." "Thank you, sir." Duan Yu exchanged a look with Mo Lien before saying with a smile, "If sir can find out what's strange about Jin Zhaoyang's body, it would be a great help to us." Mr. Su hurriedly said humbly, "Your highnesses are too polite. This is something that I should do." Mo Lien then turned to Sir Su and said, "Then I will hand this person over to Sir Su for you to study. If you make any progress in your research, please tell me everything you know." "Certainly." Mr. Su quickly bowed in salute. Mo Lien said to the two youths behind her, "Shi, Dark Shang, you two will follow sir and assist him in the future. All the materials needed for the research must be properly prepared." "Yes." The two youths immediately cupped their fists in salute. Mr. Su was a bit overwhelmed by the favor and repeatedly returned the salute. Chapter 28:19. Mo Lien turned around and walked out of the prison. She pursed her thin lips when she saw Duan Yu's odd expression. What? Have the subordinates of the Night Pavilion never rebelled before? What kind of nonsensical names did His Highness the Crown Prince come up with? Humph. Prince Mo turned to leave haughtily. However, they heard Jin Zhaoyang's terrified screams. "Let me out! What are you doing? Don't lock me up here. Don't! Where are you taking me? Just kill me. Just kill me. Shut up." Duan Yu turned around and coldly glanced at him. He sarcastically said, "Right now, we merely need you to cooperate and provide some blood. If you don't cooperate, do you want to become like him?" After saying this, Duan Yu gestured with his eyes for him to look at the black shadow huddled in the corner. Jin Zhaoyang violently shuddered, and then he wilted. He repeatedly nodded in agreement. Don't make me like this. I'll provide. I'll definitely tell you everything I know and help you without reserve." Duan Yu swept him a glance before following him out of the prison. After exiting the dungeon, Hui Feng walked up to ask, "Your Highness, how should we deal with the living dead in the dungeon?" "Deal with him," Mo Lien replied apathetically. It was also a very painful thing for that person to stay like this, neither dead nor alive. Speaking of which, he had helped him a lot. "Okay." Hui Feng nodded and had one of his hidden guards go deal with the cripple in the dungeon. However, it wasn't long before the entire dungeon emitted a vibrating hum. The hidden guards guarding the door were confused and wanted to rush in to investigate, but they were instantly sent flying by a gust of air and crashed to the ground with a clatter. Mo Lien and Duan Yu's expressions changed at the same time, and they rushed into the dungeon again. At this time, the dungeon was littered with shattered bricks and stones. That inexplicable force had also blasted out a semicircular gap in the sturdiest wooden fence. Fortunately, Su Xuetao had two secret guards protecting him, so he didn't suffer any serious injuries. On the other hand, Jin Zhaoyang, who had been seriously injured before, was thrown out by this force and landed at the entrance of the dungeon. It was clear that he was on the verge of death. Su Xuetao hurriedly ordered people to carry Jin Zhaoyang out for treatment. Inside the dungeon, many secret guards stood by Prince Mo's side, looking at the blurry black shadow in the cage. Just now, it was this person who had emitted a very strong energy fluctuation that had caused half of the prison cell to collapse in an instant. What the hell was this person? Half of his body was already paralyzed and unable to move, so how could he still release such a powerful force? Duan Yu narrowed his eyes as he sized up that person. That weirdo, who had been huddling in the corner the entire time, had already sat up at this time, and his eerie eyes stared fixedly at him and Mo Lien. Mo Lien frowned. This person is very strange. Be careful. Your Highness, there's actually a cave here. Huifeng's voice attracted everyone's attention. Mo Lien and Duan Yu walked over one after the other. Sure enough, they saw that a cave had been broken open in the prison cell. And foam poured in from the inside with a whoosh. At a glance, it seemed like there was no end in sight. Huifeng's figure swayed slightly before he was instantly pulled over by Mo Lien. There seemed to be a very strong suction force underground. If a person stood at the entrance of the cave, they really would be pulled in if they weren't careful. Chapter 28:20. Your Highness, how about I go down and take a look? Huifeng nimbly tied a rope around his waist. How can you go down with this rope? Duan Yu glanced at him and pursed his lips. The gales below are like knives. Although you've used a protective shield, the rope is exposed, so it'll definitely be cut the moment you go down. Mo Lien looked at him. You have a solution. Duan Yu's hand swept out, and a metal rope landed in his hand. I'll go down and take a look. Huifeng hastily stopped him and said, let me go. Duan Yu waved his hand and tied that strange metal rope around his waist before handing the other end to Mo Lien. Then, he jumped into that pitch-black hole without another word. Mo Lien felt her hand tighten slightly, and she forcefully pulled on the rope in her hand. That metal rope immediately extended endlessly into the depths of the hole. Huifeng couldn't help but be speechless. Heavens, just how deep is this hole? Prince Chen had already gone down for more than 5 minutes, but this rope was still extending endlessly. After several more minutes passed, Mo Lien took a step backwards. He raised and flung his left hand, pulling hard on the metal rope with a backhand. That strange rope was stretched straight and taut, falling vertically into the dark hole, stretched until it was straight. Huifeng hastily wanted to go up and help, but he only took a step back when he saw Prince Mo shaking his head at him. Ahem. A muffled cough sounded especially clear in the silence of the surroundings. Everyone reflexively turned their heads and shockingly discovered that the filthy figure that had originally curled up into a ball was actually slowly standing up. Weren't the meridians in his limbs severed? Huifeng blurted out. All the hidden guards instantly felt their hair stand on end, and they surged forward to firmly protect His Highness the Crown Prince in the middle as they focused on dealing with that strange person. Cough, cough, cough. The strange person let out very strange coughs, as if he hadn't spoken for several decades. As soon as he opened his mouth, it was as if a wheel had run over him, and even his vocal cords were a bit torn. Everyone was on high alert, waiting for the strange man to make his move. However, after waiting for a long time, there was still no movement from the other party. That pair of serene eyes seemed to be a little focused, and his gaze fell on them indifferently. Huifeng was considered experienced and knowledgeable, but he couldn't help but feel a bit horrified at this moment. Who had ever seen a blind and mute guy whose limbs and veins were all broken slowly recover in less than an hour? Was he a freak? Your Highness. Huifeng felt that he needed to quickly take His Highness the Crown Prince away from this place. This strange person seemed to have too many variables. Mo Lien gave him a look, telling him to calm down. At this moment, he was holding onto the metal rope, so naturally, he couldn't escape. Fortunately, Duan Yu's movements were quick, and it didn't take long for him to be hauled up by Mo Lien along the rope. There was still something wrapped in a piece of cloth on his shoulder. As soon as he jumped to the ground, he hurriedly threw the thing on his shoulder to the ground and jumped to the side with a dark face. It stinks. It was really stinky. Mo Lien also caught a whiff of this odor, and she couldn't help but frown as she took a step back. That cloth unraveled, revealing a person with disheveled hair and dirt all over his body. As if he had been buried in the ground for several decades. He was filthy and smelly. Probably even the beggars on the streets were a bit better than him. By now, Duan Yu had already seen the strange person's appearance in the corner. What happened to him? He stood up. Chapter 28-21. Ha 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 ha. At this time, the person in the shroud suddenly let out an unpleasant, owl-like laugh. Old geezer, you're not dead, ha 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 ha. Cough, cough, cough. At this time, the weirdo in the corner slowly straightened his body, revealing a pitch-black face. Duan Yu's figure flashed to Mo Lian's side. The two looked at each other and saw a hint of confusion in each other's eyes. Judging from their conversation, it seemed like they were old acquaintances. Looks like you've lost. Ha ha ha. The person in the shroud abruptly tossed aside the cloth on his body, his eyes overflowing with a shrewd light. Cough, cough. At this time, the person in the corner had also slowly walked forward. His gaze also contained some confusion as it landed on Mo Lian's group. Who are you? Duan Yu glanced at Mo Lian and lowered his voice to ask, this person can't be Beiwang Valley's previous owner, right? So, the owner actually didn't die at all, and you brought people to openly enter it like this? This was truly a blunder. Mo Lian was also a bit dumbfounded at this time, and she turned to look at Huifeng, who was standing next to her. Huifeng explained woodenly, when this subordinate found this place, the valley entrance was crawling with poisonous insects and snakes. After having people clean it up, they went inside to take a look. This place had clearly been vacant for several decades. Duan Yu couldn't help but laugh out loud. So this group of idiots thought that this place was ownerless. Who would have expected that the previous owner would be imprisoned in the dungeon for some reason and come back to life now? Huifeng's mouth twitched, and he cupped his hands in greeting. May I ask who senior is? This old man is Qin Qi. That weirdo looked around, and when his gaze landed on Mo Lian and Duan Yu, it clearly paused for a split second, and a faint hint of surprise appeared in his eyes. These two juniors looked to be in their early 20s, but their cultivation was rather shocking. Old senior, why are you in this dungeon? Huifeng asked exasperatedly, are you the valley master of Beiwang Valley? Qin Qi shook his head. No. Many years ago, this old man and that old ghost chased an enemy to this Beiwang Valley. After killing the enemy, we will also kill everyone in this valley. Not even a chicken or dog will be spared. Then why did Senior become like that? Since he had already eliminated his enemy, why did he still end up in such a ghastly state and locked up in the dungeon? Huifeng simply couldn't figure it out no matter how hard he racked his brains. Ha 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 ha. It was me who did it. The other person laughed complacently. Old Ghost Chen, are you still not going to admit defeat? Qin Qi glanced at him indifferently. How did I lose? This group of juniors just happened to barge in by accident, and the gambling had long been spoiled by them. To be fair, we should have a rematch. Seniors, may I ask what your wager is? Duan Yu inquired curiously. Brat, I can see that you have a good bone structure and excellent talent. You are a good material for cultivation. Do you want to take this old man as your master? Hee, thank you. My name is Lu Zheng. Have you heard of my name? This old man is an outstanding mechanism master who is renowned throughout the 3 provinces. Brat, I can see that your hands are suitable for fiddling with elaborate mechanisms, so you might as well take this old man as your master. Bah, shameless thing, you want to kidnap a disciple again. Qin Qi scolded him before turning to look at Mo Lian with a grin. Brat, you are an artificer, right? Chapter 28-22. A chrysanthemum-like smile instantly blossomed on his aged face. Child, how about I impart all my life's knowledge to you? This way, I can die without any regrets. Bah! Don't think of dying in front of me. Scram! Scram, scram, scram. You're the one scram. You're not allowed to die in front of me. Then let's continue gambling. Wait, seniors, seniors. Seniors, fuck, these two people added together were probably 1,000 years old, right? Why were they still acting like old urchins, biting each other whenever they met? Duan Yu helplessly separated the two of them, but the next second, he couldn't resist taking a step back from the stench. Mo Lien couldn't resist twitching her mouth, and she silently inched back half a step. It wasn't that he was disdainful of these two seniors, but they were truly too smelly. Compared to that strange fish they encountered in north-facing Great Forest that day fine, there wasn't much of a difference between the two. Seniors, according to what you said earlier, you chased your enemy here. After killing your enemy, why would you, Duan Yu pointed at their unbearably filthy and smelly bodies. Moreover, Senior Chen Chi's meridians were clearly severed earlier, so why would they be now? Kid, you're very curious. Chen Chi chuckled as he approached Mo Lien. The latter retreated several steps back and shook his head. This junior isn't curious. Duan Yu, let's go. After all this commotion, it was almost daybreak. He had to hurry back. His wifey was still waiting for him at home. He didn't want to mess around here with these smelly old men. Duan Yu immediately followed after. He also felt that rather than being targeted by these two eccentric geezers, it would be better to leave with Mo Lien as soon as possible. Senior Chen, since this place isn't Senior's residence, then it belongs to this junior. Mo Lien waved her hand at Huifeng and the others. Find some people to throw away all the junk inside and renovate it. Stay here for a while. Yes. Huifeng nodded, and then he silently glanced at the Crown Prince. His Highness the Crown Prince seized this residence in north-facing valley in front of these two eccentric old men. Wasn't this a bit too careless? After all, these two seniors had unfathomable cultivation bases. However, the two old men were also very strange. When they heard the Crown Prince say this, they did not refute or get angry. It was as if they really did not have the slightest interest in this residence. Punk, have you thought it through? Chen Chi and Lu Jing chased after Mo Lien and Duan Yu at the same time and asked. What do you think? The two of them looked at each other and hurriedly rushed out of the door, unwilling to stay with these two strange old men for even a minute longer. What kind of joke was this? Out of the blue, they were talking about acknowledging him as their master. These two old and indecent fellows. How could these two old men, who had popped out of nowhere, casually accept a disciple? They weren't familiar with each other, so why should they acknowledge him as their master the moment they met? I won't admit it, I won't admit it. The two of them were extremely fast, one black and one white, like lightning, leaving the North Valley in an instant. Not long after they left the valley, Mo Lien summoned Little Seven, and Duan Yu quickly jumped up as well. Little Seven transformed into a golden dragon and soared into the sky, bringing the two of them back to the royal school. At this time, the sky was already starting to brighten. The two of them had just stepped through Dong Lin Court's entrance when they heard a crisp voice resounding in dissatisfaction. Great! Sneaking out to play in the middle of the night without a JoJo. The two of them felt a chill at the back of their heads, and they turned around to look. Chapter 28-23. Under the faint morning light, Lady Jojo was wearing a pinkish-pink dress and a large red cloak. She looked like a small jade doll with a taut stoic face as she sat on a stone stool at the side of the garden, glaring at the two of them with her round eyes. The little fellow's hair was tied up into a simple and neat ponytail, and a small golden butterfly was faintly fluttering in her hair. Her cheeks were pink and tender, and her skin was as smooth as jade. It truly made one's heart flutter. Did Lady Jojo just happen to catch them red-handed? The two of them were dazed for a moment before walking over to her. Wifey, why are you up? Morning, Jojo. The two of them were in high spirits and looked magnanimous. Xiao Qiao's little eyes, however, could not help but sweep back and forth between the two of them. She glanced at one and then looked at the other. With a stern face, she asked in a loud voice, "Where did the two of you go in the middle of the night?" Mo Lien suddenly felt like laughing. However, it was better not to laugh now, lest his wifey explode. Arbor looked at the two of them suspiciously no matter how he looked at them. Didn't they say that men were a strange species? They could wear open-crotch pants and visit brothels together. Revolutionary friendships all started from visiting brothels. What are you thinking about? Mo Lien's eyes twitched inwardly. She was about to pat the little fellow's head when she suddenly recalled that she seemed to have come into contact with a stinky old ghost earlier, so she quickly retracted her hand. When Lady Jojo saw this, she felt that this man was even more suspicious. If he didn't do anything wrong, why didn't he dare to touch Jojo? The little fellow bounced up and pattered to the two of them. She looked up and asked solemnly, "Speak. Where did you go?" Cough. Duan Yu blinked and said innocently, "Jojo, I was woken up by Mo Lien. When I came out, I saw this guy sneaking out the door." Mo Lien turned around and fiercely glared at him. Brotherly love dies at the sight of the light, so it was indeed her husband who had sneaked out in the middle of the night. Jojo turned his head and said, "Tell me the truth." "I built a small base in the great forest of the north and arranged for many people to be stationed there. I went there overnight to take a look." Mo Lien smoothly narrated, "Who knew that I would encounter two stinky old geezers in the small base's dungeon. This stinky old geezer insisted that hubby acknowledge him as his master. After a round of torment, hubby could only rush back when the sun had already risen." Mr. Jojo quickly took a step back and looked at the two men with disdain. "Oh. No wonder the two of you smell so weird. So it's because of the old man. It stinks, it stinks." The two princes who were despised expressed that they were really innocent. Before they could continue their conversation, a loud voice shouted from behind them, "Who's smelly? Little miss, come here and explain to this old man." Mo Lien was slightly startled, and she quickly turned around to look. She saw the two old men, Chen Qi and Lu Zheng, standing at the entrance of the garden's small arched door and looking at them with bright eyes. "Why did you follow us?" Duan Yu was also greatly astonished, even shocked. Little Seven's speed actually couldn't shake off these two old men. Who exactly were they? With his and Mo Lien's cultivation, they actually didn't sense the two old men following them the entire way. Chapter 28-24. The two people's expressions both changed, and they hastily blocked in front of Qiao Mu with a flash. "Punk, quickly move aside. This old man wants to have a good talk with the little miss." Before he could finish speaking, a light flashed from the little girl's body, and two pitch-black wooden tokens suddenly flew out and hung in midair, flickering with a lustrous black light. Mo Lien was shocked, thinking that his wifey had preemptively used talismans. But when he focused his eyes, these weren't ebony talismans, but two wooden tokens with very simple and clear lines. Each wooden token was engraved with a person's name. What were these? Duan Yu and Mo Lien both turned to look at the little fellow. Xiao Qiao, on the other hand, had a baffled look on her face. She stretched out her hand and pushed the two of them. Then, she walked forward with small steps between the two of them. "What are you two doing? Casually barging into someone else's house." "I want, little miss, who are you?" Chen Qi reached out to grab that token in midair, his eyes shining as he looked at the child. "What's your relationship with the Xuanji school?" The other elderly man, Lu Zheng, also looked at Arbor in excitement. Xuanji school. A thought flashed through Arbor's mind, and he sized up these two elderly men. Could these two tokens in midair be these two old men's tokens? You know Senior Xuanji. Back then in the Xuanji mystic realm, the little fellow was forced to accept this title of second-generation sect master and received several messy missions. After that, she threw this second-generation sect master title to the back of her mind. In any case, she was the only naked person in the entire Xuanji school, so this second-generation sect master title naturally existed only in name. But she didn't expect that she would unexpectedly encounter two Xuanji school disciples here today. According to Xuanji's words, these disciples with name tags were all one of the 103 first-generation disciples. Didn't this Xuanji tell her to gather all the first-generation disciples? In truth, she had long forgotten about this matter. Who the hell knew where to find those first-generation disciples? But now, it seemed that the world was this wonderful. While you were completely unprepared, a Xuanji sect disciple jumped out. You are junior sister Xuanji's descendant? Chen Qi asked in a trembling voice. You've seen Xuanji before, haven't you? Where have you seen her? Yes, Xuanji. How is Xuanji now? Lu Jing couldn't help but ask agitatedly. She. How is she? Arbor was silent for a moment and then said, what I saw was only her afterimage. In the Xuanji mystic realm. She didn't know if she should tell these two that she had obtained the Xuanji core. She was afraid that these two people were crazy or had ulterior motives. It was her first time meeting these two old men, so she naturally couldn't trust them completely. You have our name tag in your hand. Chen Qi said excitedly, you must be the second-generation head of our Xuanji school. The veins on Arbor's forehead throbbed slightly. Chen Qi ignored him and was still very excited. He hurriedly went forward and bowed, second sect leader, I am Chen Qi, the first-generation elder Chen Qi. I am Xuanji's senior brother. Second sect leader, I am also Xuanji's senior brother. Lu Jing hurriedly went forward and said, second sect leader, you don't have to hold back. The two of us are absolutely sincere to Xuanji school. You can trust us completely. Yes, second sect leader, tell us more about Xuanji's situation. Chapter 28-25. Arbor gazed at these two people. To be more precise, she had not been able to clearly see the faces of these two people until now. There was a thick layer of filth on their heads, faces, and the back of their hands, as if they were fished out from the 18th level of a smelly ditch. They were so smelly that Miss Chiao wanted to roll her eyes. You guys are too smelly, Arbor bluntly said as she glanced at Mo Lian and Duan Yu. You two also made them stink. The two elders and two youths that Miss Chiao called smelly people silently looked at each other. Duan Yu pulled up his sleeve and sniffed. Am I really very smelly? It's suffocating. Xiao Mu exclaimed expressionlessly. Clean yourselves first before talking to me. Mo Lian and Duan Yu were slightly better, and they came out after a few minutes. Standing obediently in front of the stoic Miss Chiao, Mo Lian voluntarily admitted her mistake. I shouldn't have slept until the middle of the night and groped my way out by myself. Duan Yu nodded repeatedly. You should have brought Jojo with you when going out on a mission. Miss Chiao harumphed. To think that she had put on a fiery red battle suit so early in the morning, deciding to have a good fight with them. She didn't expect these two to be so sensible. This was like punching soft cotton. These two people didn't want to fight with her, so what could she do by herself? She could only give up. As for those two old smelly people, they truly had decades of grease on their bodies, so they washed for a full 2 hours before coming out to meet people. By the time the two of them came out, Arbor and Qi Xuanxuan's group had already eaten breakfast. The little fatty looked back with a bowl of porridge in his hand and couldn't help but point at the two people strangely. Hey, who are these two people? When he pointed, the others also turned their heads to look at him. They saw two sanctimonious middle-aged men slowly walking over. Although they seemed to be moving very slowly, they arrived in front of them in the blink of an eye. Both of them were dressed in green robes, which made them look like immortals. He must have been a handsome man when he was young. These two reclusive seniors met by chance last night and were picked up by Mo Lian and Duan Yu, Arbor explained aloofly. Picked up. As expected of Prince Mo and Prince Chen, they were able to pick up 2 seniors just by going out for a walk. Duan Yu and Mo Yen couldn't help but fall silent, and they met little fatty's group's adoring gazes. Second sect leader, this breakfast looks pretty good. Second sect leader, add 2 more pairs of chopsticks. Second sect master, after we finish eating, can you tell us more about junior sister Xuanji? Little fatty was dumbfounded. He turned to look at the expressionless arbor. Why do I feel like these 2 seniors are calling Jojo sect leader? It's the second sect master. Lu Yu held back her laughter and added. Yes. Arbor stared at the 2 people with a cold expression for a moment before squeezing out, add 2 more sets of chopsticks. A servant immediately walked up and placed 2 clean sets of chopsticks on the table. Second sect leader, it's truly great to be able to see you. Chen Qi ate 2 mouthfuls and couldn't stop wiping his tears with his sleeve. Seeing you is like seeing our junior sister Xuanji. That's right. Taking a closer look, you really do resemble our junior sister Xuanji. Both of you are equally cold and cheerless, with picturesque features. MHM, noble temperament. Chapter 28-26. Qi Xuanxuan's eyebrows twitched. Why did she feel like these 2 seniors were a bit fawning? The little stoic looked at them expressionlessly. Desolate. How was that senior Xuanji calm? Recalling senior Xuanji's afterimage she saw in the mystic realm, the little stoic couldn't associate her with the word desolate. The little stoic felt that it was more appropriate to call her an amusing idiot or a chatterbox. If even her afterimage could talk so much, it was obvious how chatterbox her original self was at this time. Mo Yen and Duan Yu could tell from their conversation. It turned out that these 2 people were actually elders of the Xuanji school, and they both wanted to worship Jojo as the schoolmaster. Thankfully, they didn't agree to become that nuisance's disciple. Otherwise, wouldn't they be a generation lower than their Sir Jojo for no reason? Inappropriate, extremely inappropriate. Cough, speaking of which, when did Jojo take over as the Xuanji school's schoolmaster? Second schoolmaster, Chen Qi said solemnly. On the other side, Lu Jing also nodded and cupped his hands towards the sky. He wiped his tears and said, the schoolmaster can only be our junior sister Xuanji. Everyone ridiculed this oddball school in their minds one after another. They always felt that the little stoic had her own oddball halo. No matter what serious matter it was, it would always run wildly toward a strange fork in the road in her hands. For example, taking over a school was a very serious matter, but when it came to the little stoic, it went in the direction of a joke. Laugh if you want to, no need to hold it in, the little stoic said coldly with a wooden face. From the corner of her eye, she could see the smile on Qi Xuanxuan's face. She couldn't hold it in any longer. Our dear Qi Xianxian hastily pressed down the corners of her mouth and said with a serious expression, how is it funny? Little fatty, what are you laughing at? The little fatty's smile froze. When he saw the little stoic looking at him from the corner of her eye, he quickly put on a serious expression. Jojo, cough, when did you take over as the schoolmaster? Why didn't we know? It's been a long time. The little stoic snapped. Before I met you guys. Second sect master, where did you discover junior sister Xuanji's mystic realm? Is it that time when the 3 sects, 5 factions, and 8 great patrician families gathered from the north, south, east, west, and east to train in the mystic beast forest? Duan Yu chuckled. Xiao Mu expressionlessly responded with a word. She once again recalled her disastrous encounter during her experiential training in the mystic beast forest. At that time, she had even been plotted against by the disaster-courting talisman and cut a sorry figure. This was a past that she really didn't want to talk about. Duan Yu's mouth twitched. He remembered that after the little fellow had disappeared from the mystic beast forest, everyone had searched for her with great fanfare. In the end, when she appeared in the Mo Kingdom capital, the little one seemed to be completely unaware, only knowing how to cultivate and cultivate. For a while, he didn't even recognize them. Lower star field? Chen-Chi asked cautiously. The little stoic put on a serious expression and silently put down her chopsticks. Chen-Chi started sobbing again. Junior sister, you're too pitiful. You were actually forced to flee to the lower star region. Sob. It's all that old bastard's fault. Right, that's right, it's him. If it weren't for that guy quarreling with our junior sister, how could our junior sister have run out of the abode and ended up falling into someone's trap? It's that old bastard who deserves to die. He married our junior sister but didn't treat her well. The two old men sobbed loudly when they talked about their sore spots. Chapter 28-27. Arbor silently glanced at the two old men. It seemed that there was a heart-wrenching, sorrowful love story between them and Senior Xuanji. Everyone imagined a touching melodramatic four-sided love story. At the same time, they looked at the two old men with gossipy eyes. As the king of gossip, the little fatty couldn't help but ask, "Seniors, can you tell us about you and Senior Xuanji?" Sob sob sob. Chen-Chi said while crying, "Junior Xuanji and I grew up together on Rosy Cloud's Peak since we were 10 years old." Me too. Lu Jing interrupted in annoyance. Junior Xuanji was smart and lively since she was young. She was born beautiful. Chen-Chi wiped his tears. It's hard not to like her. Both of you liked Senior Xuanji at the same time. The little fatty's eyes flashed with the fire of gossip. Who would have thought that after you grew up, an old bastard senior would appear? He was so talented and unrestrained that he attracted Senior Xuanji and abducted her. How did you know? Chen-Chi looked surprised. The little fatty pursed his lips. Seniors, you're underestimating my intelligence. Is it so hard to guess? From the few words that the two of them had exchanged before, it was easy to deduce what they were thinking. That's right. That old bastard abducted our junior Xuanji. Chen-Chi thought of the sad part and couldn't help but call out, "Give us a pot of wine." Arbor silently took out a wine pot carved with plum blossoms and placed it in front of the two. In the end, everyone quickly took out wine cups from their inner worlds and rushed forward to share the wine. After 1 cup per person, the wine pot was empty. Chen-Chi and Lu Jing took a sip of the wine and sighed deeply. Then their eyes lit up. This wine is not bad. It's mellow and has a hint of the cold fragrance of plum blossoms. When I take a sip, I feel as if there are wisps of saint power flowing slowly in my body. The two of them took another sip, and Lu Jing started sobbing again. What have we been doing for the past few decades? When Lu Jing cried, Chen-Chi cried as well. The two old men who were hundreds of years old cried miserably in front of a group of juniors. Arbor looked at Qi Xianxian speechlessly. Qi Xianxian hurriedly took out 2 pieces of leftover fabric from her pocket. He handed it to the 2 seniors and said sympathetically, "Seniors, please don't cry. Wipe your tears." Chen-Chi and Lu Jing took the piece of cloth and wiped their tears and snot as they said pitifully, "After so many years, I've finally heard some news about junior sister Xuanji. I'm both happy and upset. Second sect leader, you don't have to hide it from us. Actually, we already knew that junior sister Xuanji was dead 100 years ago. Her life tablet has been broken long ago, and her life lamp has been scattered. The afterimage you saw in the Xuanji mystic realm should be the last remnant consciousness she left behind in this world." The two of them heaved a long sigh, raised their wine glasses, and took a sip. "We've been together with junior martial sister day and night, cultivating together for hundreds of years. However, it was precisely because of that time when junior sister went down the mountain to gain experience and got acquainted with that old bastard that everything changed. I really don't know what's so good about that bastard. He looks so dignified, but he's actually a cold-hearted stinky man." "That's right. Junior Marshall sister's love was really misplaced, and her sincerity went down the drain. Who exactly is this old bastard you're talking about? Chapter 28. Arbor expressionlessly asked the two of them. Second sect master, you don't need to concern yourself with this matter. Chen Qi gnashed his teeth. This is a grudge between us two brothers. As long as this old bastard dares to show himself, us two brothers will definitely grind his bones to dust. Xiao Mu replied with an, "Oh," and the atmosphere suddenly chilled. Chen Qi opened his mouth, but he suddenly didn't know what to say. Shouldn't the second sect master say something like, "Sect master's business is my business, sect master's grudge is my grudge, and I want to avenge you together," or something impassioned like that? Why was he suddenly so mute? When Mo Lian and Duan Yu saw the two old men's deflated expressions, they couldn't resist bursting out in laughter. These two people really didn't understand Jojo at all. Lady Jojo was actually an honest person. Since someone else said she didn't need to care, then she would definitely wash her hands and not care. Seniors, looking at how you were in Beiwang Valley, could it be that, you're courting your own deaths? Chen Qi gazed deeply at Mo Lian before sighing. Ever since junior sister left with that old bastard more than 200 years ago, the two of us felt that there was nothing left to live for, so we simply entered closed-door cultivation. It wasn't until 100 years ago that we forcefully exited closed-door cultivation when we received news of junior sister's death. We searched for our enemies along the way to avenge junior sister. When the last enemy was also eliminated by us, we felt that life was hopeless and lacked a lot of fun. Thus, the two of us made a bet. Whoever died first had to be buried in junior sister's cenotaph. Chen Qi sighed in despair. I shattered the meridians in my 4 limbs and sealed off my 5 senses. I originally thought that I would definitely die. He glared fiercely at Lu Zheng. Who knew that this son of a bitch would actually set up a mechanism to extend my life by 30 years? So senior, you jumped into that bottomless pit yourself. Duan Yu twitched his mouth as he looked at Lu Zheng with certainty. Exactly. Lu Zheng's old face was taut as he said angrily, if it weren't for you being so fussy and meddling in other people's business, I would have starved to death in a year or so. Boring. Arbor finished the appraisal and coldly glanced at the two of them. Chen Qi suddenly burst into tears, pounding his chest and stamping his feet. It's boring, it's boring. This old man also feels extremely bored. For the past 100 years, he didn't even know how he had survived. Woo, Xiao Mu glanced at the bawling old man, and her gaze softened. She said faintly, she passed away very peacefully. Her broken shadow had set up a trap in the secret realm. More than 20 generations of people have been cheated. With that, she briefly recounted how Xuanji had set up the mystic realm, tricked batches of people into entering it, and finally handed over the past generations of resources to her, the second sect master. Everyone was dumbfounded when they heard this. When Xuanji's 2 senior brothers heard this, they even smiled and nodded repeatedly. That's what our junior sister would do. She played with more than 20 generations of people. The mystic realm opened once every 10 years, and she had a lot of fun. Arbor said expressionlessly, presumably, she was an open-minded person by nature. By the time she reached the final step, there was no longer a trace of resentment in her heart. What was left was probably just a trace of reluctance to leave this world. That was why this bored fellow would set up a mystic realm and find more than 20 generations of juniors to play with her. Chapter 28-29. You've punished yourselves for several decades, and you've repaid your debts. From today onwards, behave properly and work yourself to the bone for the Xuanji school, Sir Jojo, Arbor said with a frosty expression. Chen Qi and Lu Zheng were taken aback and stared dumbfoundedly at Arbor. This little girl looked at her ice-cold little stoic face, but her thoughts were more meticulous than anyone else's. He was actually able to capture their true intentions from their words and phrases. Death was a simple matter for powerful beings like them. All they had to do was self-destruct. These two fools actually blamed themselves too much for Xuanji's death, so they hurt themselves out of grief. They were just punishing each other. If Xuanji was alive, with her personality, she would most likely beat them to a pulp. You're first-generation disciples of the Xuanji school, so you should know that the Xuanji school has 103 first-generation disciples, right? The two nodded. Senior Xuanji has entrusted you with an important mission. The little stoic said without blushing or panting, Senior Xuanji's intention is for you to find all the remaining first-generation disciples and bring them back. She took out a large pile of black nameplates from her inner world and handed them to Qin Qi and Lu Zheng. As long as these nameplates are within a radius of 1,000 feet, they can sense the disciples' auras. Keep them well. The little stoic pushed the pile of nameplates in front of Qin Qi and Lu Zheng. Qin Qi hastily asked, Junior Sister Xuanji wants to summon everyone back. Arbor replied dryly. On the side, Lu Zheng glanced at the little stoic in confusion. Second-generation schoolmaster, is this a mission the schoolmaster entrusted to you? He hit the nail on the head. The little stoic just wanted to be a hands-off boss right now. Her small face tensed up. This schoolmaster is handing this mission to you right now. Do you have any objections? No objections. Qin Qi and Lu Zheng were a bit speechless. Mo Lian and the others, who were watching the show and enjoying the show, were secretly stifling their laughter. From today onwards, your main mission is to find the remaining 101 first-generation disciples. Qin Qi cupped his hands in salute. Don't worry, second-generation schoolmaster, the two of us won't seek death again. This little stoic looked cold and cheerless, but everything she did actually contained good intentions. She had given them such a tedious task so that they would be busy and not have time to think about other things. Arbor glanced at them and then looked away. Let's go. Mo Lian stood up as well. They still had to rush to the practice field to watch the competition. Today was the first day of Holy Sun Miyan selection in the royal school. The competition should be very lively. Second sect master. Lu Zheng hurriedly called out to her. Before Xuanji left with that old bastard, she disbanded the Xuanji sect. After all these years, our Rosy Cloud's Peak should still be there. Yes, Red Cloud's Peak is full of spiritual power all year round. It's a very suitable place for cultivation. We want to go back and prepare for the re-establishment of our sect. There needs to be a ceremony. Xiao Mu's footsteps abruptly halted, and she turned around to look at them, her eyes flickering. How big? What? How big is Red Cloud's Peak? The Red Cloud Peak stretches far and wide, and beside it is the Carefree Peak. It's quite big. It's also not far from the Great Forest. Yes, one day is enough for a round trip. The little stoic's eyes lit up. Let's go together. Second-generation schoolmaster, you want to go back with us? Okay, that's really great. Xiao Mu nodded her small head repeatedly. She felt that the Holy Water sect was probably settled. Chapter 28:30. The little stoic was a person of action. After agreeing to leave the day after tomorrow with Qin Qi and Lu Zheng, she followed Mo Lian's group to the training field. Senior Xuanji's cultivation is profound, so she probably wasn't forced to go to the lower star domain by her enemies. Arbor said aloofly. She probably traveled everywhere to relieve her boredom due to her emotional trauma. She finally settled down on Sikong planet, Mo Lian analyzed. The word love does a lot of harm. Qi Xian pretended to be tender and sighed faintly. Beside her, the little fatty involuntarily shuddered. Xian, can you not be so sentimental? Given Xian's temperament, when she acted in such a manner, it was truly a bit shocking. Humph. Qi Xianxian rolled her eyes at him. Senior Xuanji's two senior brothers aren't normal people. Duan Yu nodded and said, there are 100 first-generation disciples in the Xuanji school, and each one of them probably has profound cultivation. That was to say, as long as Xuanji was willing, she could summon these people to serve her at any time. Why would she be forced to leave the divine province by her enemies? Senior Xuanji actually just went out to relieve her boredom and leave this sad place of the divine province. She probably didn't want to come back. Senior Xuanji's lifespan was up, so she naturally left this world, Arbor said slowly. Chen Qi and Lu Jing should also be aware of this. I know what they're thinking. The little stoic was quick-witted and said with certainty, life is bitter and short, and their obsessions are too deep. They wasted hundreds of years in closed-door cultivation like ostriches, not daring to hear or see anything in the world. If all this wasted time was used to accompany the dejected Xuanji to travel everywhere to relieve her boredom. The little stoic paused in her steps and looked up at the warm sun. Then they wouldn't be so regretful when they think about it now. That's why they spent 30 extremely miserable years in Beiwang Valley. In reality, they were punishing themselves for wasting time and losing the most memorable period of their lives. Everyone was taken aback, and then they nodded repeatedly in a trance. The little fellow was more thorough than anyone else. Everyone was wholeheartedly convinced by her analysis. These two idiots. Qi Xianxian shook her head, they are punishing themselves in North Gaze Valley. Do you think they can catch up with time? Everyone sighed, only to hear the little girl say expressionlessly, Xuanji has already let go of her last days on Seacombe Planet. The ones who can't let go are the two fools who are obsessed. Hence, they found something for themselves to do and hunted down Xuanji's former enemies. When they finished off their last enemy in North Far Valley, they were also at a loss. How pitiful and sad. Xiao Mu shook her small head. She had given the two old men an unusual task to do. Presumably, they would not have time to think about it in the future. Not only did he save her, the little sect leader, but he also enriched the lives of the two elders, killing two birds with one stone. Jojo, should we call you second sect leader Qiao in the future? Qi Xianxian suddenly laughed out loud. The veins on the little guy's forehead throbbed violently. Second sect master, this title is really too weird. Then won't Jojo's descendants be called third and fourth sect masters in the future? Everyone held back their laughter and looked at the little fatty. Little fatty, don't run. Arbor jumped up and chased after the little fatty with clenched fists. Jojo, don't worry, we won't waste time. We will definitely advance with you. Chapter 28-31. The sun hung high in the sky, and its rays were blazing. Today was the first day of the competition, so it was naturally a preliminary selection. There really wasn't much to see. The entire practice field was divided into 10 martial arts stages, and the competition would be held simultaneously. When Arbor and the others arrived, the competition was in full swing. According to Holy Sun Miyan's explanation, the Imperial Academy would select 30 students with decent cultivation and bring them into the Sun-Moon mystic realm to search for treasures. On the contrary, Xiao Mu disapproved of that treasure hunt or whatever. It wasn't the first time the Sun-Moon mystic realm opened, and the people from the Sun-Moon Shrine had entered who knew how many times. Who the hell knew what was left inside the Sun-Moon mystic realm? On the other hand, Little Fatty and the others were rather interested. As soon as they reached the arena, they waved at Arbor and said, Jojo, we're going to compete first. There were 10 martial arts stages, so they could register for the competition at any of them. Duan Yu didn't have much interest in the Sun-Moon mystic realm, but since everyone was going, it was naturally pointless for him to stay at the Imperial Academy alone. Hence, he thought that it would be good to get a spot and train with them. Hence, he also waved his paw at Arbor and followed Little Fatty to the martial arts stage on the side. Ali, like a butterfly flitting through flowers, Commandery Princess Xiang Chang dashed to Duan Yu and cheerfully exclaimed, "I finally see you again." Duan Yu didn't even bother to look at her and brushed past her. "Don't block the way." However, Commandery Princess Xiang Chang didn't mind his icy attitude at all and chuckled as she followed him. "You're also here to participate in the competition for spots, right? Let's go together, okay? Ali, when we enter the Sun-Moon Mystic Realm, let's form a team together, okay? Although my cultivation isn't high, my attainments in medicinal pills are pretty good. If we form a team, I can provide you with pills, Ali." Ali. Commandery Princess Xiang Chang stomped her feet and hastily chased after him. However, Duan Yu walked faster and faster, and he arrived at a martial arts stage in the blink of an eye. Both anxious and angry, Commandery Princess Xiang Chang chased after him. She almost bumped into someone head-on. "Hey!" Xiang Chang Commandery Princess paused and stood still. When she saw who it was, she couldn't help but feel angry. "Huanxiu, what are you doing?" Wu Huanxiu couldn't bear to look at this stupid woman. "Xiang Chang, Prince Chen is ignoring you. Why do you keep chasing after him?" "Who said that Brother Ali is ignoring me?" Xiang Chang Commandery Princess stomped her feet and said, "Even if Brother Ali ignores me now, it doesn't mean that he will ignore me in the future. As long as I work hard enough, I'll definitely be able to impress him." Wu Huanxiu sighed and rolled her eyes. "Don't be so busy. Why don't you not go to the Sun-Moon Mystery Realm? That place is quite dangerous." "No way. If Brother Ali wants to go, I must go with him." Xiangchang Commandery Princess hurriedly pushed Wu Huanxiu away. "Don't stop me. I still have to go on stage for the assessment." "You." Wu Huanxiu rolled her eyes and muttered, "You really don't get rewarded for being kind." Her gaze followed the crowd and landed on the little stoic, who was leisurely watching the show from the side. Judging from Holy Sun Miyan's tone, this crown princess of the divine province had long obtained a blank jade tablet to enter the mystic realm. She came to watch the competition purely to join in the fun. Truly, different people had different fates. Wu Huanxiu pursed her lips. She still had to fight bitterly later. Lord Holy Sun has arrived. Chapter 28-32. Arbor looked back and saw Holy Sun Miyan slowly walking over from the parted crowd with a cold and handsome face, wearing an ethereal white robe. He truly looked like an old swindler. This Holy Sun's age was probably around 100 years old. All the students stepped forward to greet Holy Sun Miyan. The saint had a cold expression on his face as he nodded at the people around him. His gaze also landed on the little stoic through the crowd, and his brows involuntarily creased. Holy Sun Miyan simply felt unbearable because he couldn't eat or sleep well these past 2 days. Wherever this Sir Holy Sun went, he would be revered and treated with hospitality. Only this black-hearted couple, Mo Lien and Arbor, would dare to treat him like this. Divine Province's Crown Prince, Crown Princess, you came here so early in the morning. Do you also want to compete on stage? As soon as Holy Sun Miyan finished speaking, a weapon fell to the ground with a clang from the martial arts stage next to them. Everyone raised their heads to look at the guy who had dropped his weapon during the battle. That child's face was ashen as he looked in Arbor's direction in horror. Fuck, this punk didn't drop his weapon because he heard the words, Crown Princess, right? Sir Jojo expressionlessly glanced at the martial arts stage before retracting his gaze and walking to the other stages. He wasn't interested in watching two weaklings compete. The little Crown Princess didn't even say a word to Mi Yan, angering Holy Sun Mi Yan so much that his saint-like handsome face almost couldn't maintain its facade. On the side, the little priest couldn't resist whispering, Sir Holy Sun, it'll be fine if we don't provoke that little fiend. Holy Sun Mi Yan couldn't resist punching that priest's head. Shut up. Everyone's mouths twitched, and they felt that the noble and lofty image of Sir Holy Sun seemed to have faded away. Mi Yan's current thoughts should be, so angry, so angry, so angry. Realizing that his actions just now were somewhat inappropriate, he turned his head with a cold expression and asked the instructor beside him, "How's the competition going?" "The audition will probably be completed in the afternoon. Right now, the 10 stages have already been through more than 10 battles. The one currently in first place is the Duan clan's third young master, Duan Tianya." "Good." A thunderous roar erupted in front of a martial arts stage. The moment Arbor and Mo Lien walked over, they happened to see a student being knocked down from the ring. He rolled on the ground and landed in front of them. His body trembled for a long time, but he couldn't stand up. "Third young Master Duan is too amazing. Third young Master Duan. Third young Master Duan." Below the battle stage, a group of third young Master Duan's male and female fans screamed and laughed. Third young Master Duan already has 850 points. It's currently ranked first. As expected of my third young Master Duan. Wah wah wah, look at his stern face. It's truly handsome and unrestrained. All kinds of love-struck voices assaulted them. With a cold face, the little stoic pushed aside two women who were praising third young Master Duan with extravagant praise. "Please make way." This cold face could very easily extinguish everyone's boiling emotions. Those two women were stupefied, and their screams and cheers were doused in their throats by the little stoic's cold water. Mo Lien lowered her eyes in amusement. Chapter 28-33. Duan Tianya hugged his sword as he stood on the stage, his cold gaze sweeping over the stoic face and Prince Mo. His gaze landed behind the two of them as he jumped off the stage with a whoosh. Third young Master Duan isn't going to continue? Are you dumb? As long as third young Master Duan is standing on this stage, who would dare challenge him? Of course third young Master Duan can only walk from one stage to another and find his own opponent. That's true. There aren't any rules in this competition anyways. The more consecutive victories, the greater the number of points gained. Third young Master Duan is so young and about to break through to the spirit realm. There probably aren't many people in the entire academy who can match him in strength. I can't even count how many consecutive victories third young Master Duan has had. Third young Master Duan is here, third young Master Duan is here. The students watching from the other side of the stage started cheering. Not all students were allowed to participate in the competition. Those who were participating were mostly from the Hall of Cultivation. Those from the other support subjects were basically done for. Those with a decent cultivation base could still give it a try, but those with a weak cultivation base should just stay put and watch the show. Although the academy didn't have any requirements for the selection, none of those who signed up were below the 6th level. Qi Xian, for example, had just reached the 6th level. She'd been booed the first 2 times when she'd gone up to compete. However, everyone was a bit dumbfounded when they met. Although this little girl's cultivation wasn't all that great, she could easily kill a 9th level spirit master. The main reason was because the little girl had 2 beasts on her first move. Once Xian went up on stage, she summoned her spirit beast, the golden mane lion, without a second thought. This spirit beast was awe-inspiring, and judging from its attacks and speed, it looked like it was about to break through to the 15th level of the spirit realm. This wasn't the end of it. The most frightening thing was that the little girl waved her hand again, and a snow eagle with shocking speed immediately pounced out from beside her. Why did she have 2 contracted beasts? This was what everyone didn't understand. Those who were knowledgeable immediately understood after a glance. They pointed at the faintly discernible summon character on the snow eagle's forehead and exclaimed, "It's a summoned beast. This little girl has a summoned beast by her side. Oh my god. This little 6th rank spirit master actually had 2 beasts protecting him. How was he going to fight?" Qi Xian was a smart kid and she was also very smart. She jumped down from the ring after one round and went to challenge the level 6 and level 7 spirit masters in the other rings. As a result, his points naturally soared, and the momentum of his growth was not weak. Everyone quickly realized that there were quite a few nouveau riche students among this batch of freshmen. There were quite a few people who could summon their beasts in one go. What's going on? Could it be that these days, summoning charms were like cabbages that could be picked up at will? Everyone couldn't believe their eyes. Some students even reached out to rub their eyes and pinched their arms hard. It doesn't hurt. I feel like I'm dreaming. Stop fucking bullshitting. You pinched my arm, why would it hurt? I see summoned beasts everywhere. What's going on? Is the Zhen Duobao auction house selling summoning charms again recently? Dream on. The Zhen Duobao auction house sold a summoning charm for an astronomical price a few years ago, and that was because the family was in urgent need of money. Even the talisman patrician families can't draw summoning charms anymore. Do you think summoning charms are cabbages? Chapter 28-34. Who said that a talisman aristocratic family can't draw summoning talismans? A student shouted defiantly. That's because the Mu family of the Divine Land can't draw summoning talismans. In our Tsangzhou, the 8th young master of the Qi family can draw summoning talismans. Exactly. Everyone was discussing animatedly. Suddenly, someone shouted, 3rd young master Duan is going to challenge someone again. 3rd young master Duan is awesome. Duan Tianya turned a deaf ear to the shouts and clamor around him. He walked directly to the martial arts arena, and his pitch-black eyes were extremely deep as he looked at a young man on the martial arts arena. Whoosh! The moment Duan Tianya jumped onto the fighting ring, the crowd around him shouted excitedly again. 3rd young master Duan is going to challenge. The crowd lowered their voices. Obviously, they were not familiar with who the young man on the fighting ring was. However, the young man was wearing a close-fitting school uniform and looked very handsome. His noble and elegant temperament seemed to be faintly superior to 3rd young master Duan's. Who is that? He seems to be this year's freshman. He's not from our Divine Land. Wow, how dare he challenge Prince Chen of our Tsangzhou? Ah! This is Prince Chen, the one from Tsangzhou who has outstanding talent. Rong Li was in the crowd and looked at the two young men standing opposite each other on the fighting ring with a complicated expression. A faint coldness flashed across his eyes. He didn't expect that the people who had chased and intercepted this guy all the way were useless. They were all a bunch of good-for-nothings. Rong Li didn't want to watch anymore. When he was about to turn around and leave, he saw the Crown Prince and the Crown Princess standing not far behind him. Of course, he couldn't pretend that he didn't see them. He could only force a smile and walked forward to greet them. Crown Prince, Crown Princess, I've heard a lot about you. You are. A trace of surprise appeared in Mo Lian's eyes. This made Rong Li feel like he was being put on the spot. What the hell? He was really a crown prince from a corner of the lower star area. He couldn't even recognize the crown prince of Tsang Prefecture. The corner of Rong Li's mouth twitched as he suppressed the displeasure in his heart. He cupped his hands and said with a smile, I am Rong Li's elder brother. When the little stoic heard this person's name, she immediately turned hostile and mercilessly threw an icicle at him. Rong Li was stunned. In the past 2 days, he had seen and heard very clearly that the Crown Princess of the Divine Land was not to be trifled with. So he just came to greet him politely. Was there something wrong with the Crown Princess of the Divine Land? To think that he would suddenly attack him. Was she going to argue with everyone she met? With Rong Li's cultivation, he naturally couldn't deal with the little stoic. Fortunately, he always had an expert by his side. Upon seeing this, a woman with a slender and well-developed figure immediately pounced forward and blocked the little stoic's wave of attacks with a wave of her hand. She said gravely, the Crown Princess of the Divine Province, please stop. Su Yonyang. Block her for me. Rong Li was livid. He turned to glare at Mo Lien and said, Crown Prince of the Divine Province, you better give me an explanation. You're that Song Prefecture's Crown Prince who sent people to hunt down Duan Yu and insisted on killing him? The little stoic's face was cold. Rong Li's expression changed several times, and he quickly said, I'm afraid you misunderstood something. Rong Li is my younger brother, so I naturally wouldn't do such a deranged thing. I just got home. Wait. Chapter 28:35. Quibble. The little stoic's raised hand was suddenly gently grasped by Mo Lien. He turned to smile at her before looking up at Rong Li and asking, Songzhou's Crown Prince, aren't you leaving yet? Were they waiting to be humiliated if they didn't leave? Rong Li's expression was extremely unsightly from anger. However, he couldn't put on airs as Songzhou's Crown Prince in the academy. Of course, even if he put on airs, it was hard to say whether they would accept it. After receiving a rebuff from the little stoic, Rong Li turned around with a black face and left with Su Yonyang. His resentment towards Duan Yu increased by another stroke. How did this Duan Yu inexplicably have such a good relationship with the Divine Province's Crown Prince and Crown Princess? This made him even more vigilant against this person. As expected, he was a scheming and resourceful fellow. He must think of a way to deal with him. I want to beat him up, the little stoic said expressionlessly as she glared at Rong Li's departing figure. When she saw the scheming glint in his eyes as he approached her and Mo Lien, she recalled how Duan Yu, that pitiful fellow, had been bullied countless times by this so-called big brother of his back in Songzhou. This Rong Li was truly hilarious. Did he think that he could still be on good terms with the Divine Province's Crown Prince and Crown Princess with his character? Mo Lien silently twitched her mouth. Duan Yu, this scoundrel, usually pretended to be pitiful, making Jojo really think that this pitiful fellow had suffered a lot in Songzhou. According to his understanding of his love rival, this guy was definitely doing well in Songzhou and definitely had a good life. Sir Jojo was still ridiculing, look at that Songzhou's Crown Prince and then look at Duan Yu. They really don't look like they have the same father. He's so dejected, not like big brother Duan Yu at all. Just like you and the king of Giant Pain's heir. You're clearly cousins, but you're completely different. As expected, the dragon has 9 sons. They can dig holes, burrow into the ground, gnaw at the corners, and have everything. Mo Lien secretly suppressed her belly full of laughter and reached out to hold the little fellow's hand. Actually, Rong Li wasn't that bad no matter how you looked at it. Rong Li could be considered a talent. Arbor raised his head expressionlessly and saw third young Master Duan rapidly retreating from the arena. His body swayed for a moment before he managed to steady himself. The little stoic's eyes brightened, and she pattered up to third young Master Duan and announced in a crisp voice, "You've lost." As it turned out, while the two of them were speaking with Rong Li, third young Master Duan had already exchanged blows with Duan Yu, and he quickly retreated in defeat. As soon as Duan Tianya turned around, he saw a stoic face with a hint of schadenfreude on it standing not far away from him. Duan Yu also floated down the stage and approached Arbor with a grin. Jojo, I won. Mo Lien rolled her eyes and reached out to block his approaching smile. She ridiculed in her mind, you're a transcendent stage scoundrel, posturing and concealing your aura to fight a guy who hasn't broken through to the transcendent stage. What's there to celebrate about winning? Duan Yu forcefully flung away Mo Lien's paw and circled around to Sir Jojo's other side with a grin. Jojo, I'm awesome, right? Sir Jojo nodded and ruefully thought, the youth I thought was a weak chicken the first time I met him had already grown to this extent. Duan Tianya wasn't angry. He tilted his head and looked at Duan Yu, extending his hand openly. I'm Duan Tianya. Duan Yu. A pair of hands clasped together for a moment before loosening. Chapter 28:36. A faint smile appeared on Duan Tianya's icy face. Grandfather mentioned you a while ago. Come home and visit when you have time. Duan Yu nodded in agreement. Ever since he returned to Tsang province, he indeed hadn't visited his own family. Duan Tianya was the first person he met. This person seemed to be quite nice. Duan Yu retracted his gaze and turned to Arbor. Jojo, did Ron Li come to find you guys earlier? Arbor harumphed. I knew he wasn't a good person at first glance. I chased him away. He sent people to kill you, but we don't have any evidence for now. We can't kill him openly, so let's find a chance to tie him up and beat him up to vent our anger. Jojo, great idea. Duan Yu immediately exclaimed with adoration in his eyes. Mo Lien, do you have to be so shameless? Everything Jojo says is a good idea. He simply doesn't have any integrity. That punk has quite a few senior students protecting him. Even if you want to kidnap him, you have to plan thoroughly before kidnapping him. Duan Yu glanced at him speechlessly. What right did this guy have to look at him like he was a shameless person? He wasn't without integrity either. The next second, he was coming up with a plan and even came up with a kidnapping plan. Duan Tianya suddenly felt like he couldn't continue listening. Third Duan, your little fourth Duan's older brother, right? Arbor suddenly asked. Duan Tianya's neck stiffened as he nodded. All right then. Arbor nodded and turned to walk to the other stages. I'm going to see how Xuanxuan's competition is going. What did he mean? Duan Tianya was a bit perplexed. Why did little crown princess leave after throwing down those 3 words? Mo Lien glanced at Duan Tianya in amusement. Indeed, there really weren't many people in this world who could understand the little fellow's jumpy thoughts and speech patterns. Duan Yu chuckled. Jojo has acknowledged you for the first time. She will probably consider you as a friend in the future. Mo Lien snorted and turned to leave. Duan Yu rolled his eyes twice at his departing figure before asking, do you want to continue the competition? Duan Tianya shook his head. My points should be enough. The main reason he came to compete today was to challenge this extremely outstanding genius of the Duan clan's younger generation. Duan Yu came up from the lower star domain, but his aptitude was probably the best among the Duan clan's younger generation. Arbor walked to the front of Qi Xuanxuan's battle stage and saw that the little lass had won another match. She was grinning at him. Huifeng's figure flashed, and he suddenly appeared behind the two. He took a few steps forward and whispered to Arbor, Crown Princess, news came from the imperial capital. Something happened at Kaidai veranda. Arbor was startled and turned to look at Huifeng's solemn expression. What happened? Last night, some thugs attacked Kaidai loft and set it on fire. Mo Lien's eyes chilled when she heard this. How did the matter go? Were there any casualties? Arbor asked. 2 customers died that night. However, they weren't burned to death. They were trampled to death when they were pushed out of the door. Huifeng's expression turned increasingly unsightly when he mentioned this. Saishio was burned, and her injuries are quite serious. How could that be? Wasn't Saishio in the palace? Why did she run to Kaidai loft? Half of the gatehouse was burned down, but it was rescued in time, so the damage wasn't too great. Chapter 28:37. Arbor and Mo Lien looked at each other and whispered, I have to go back and take a look. I'll go back with you. Arbor reached out and squeezed Mo Lien's hand. She pulled him out of the crowd and whispered to him, stay here and keep an eye on Mayan. Xian and the rest still had to continue the competition in the next few days. If they both left, who knew if Mayan would take the opportunity to make things difficult for her companions. Don't worry. I use a teleportation talisman array. It will take at most a day to go back and forth. The little fellow winked at him rather smugly. I have already advanced to an Earth rank Great Talisman Master. The Earth-rank teleportation talisman array that I created can teleport up to 50 kilometers away and can teleport up to 20 people. It can teleport up to 12 times in a row. Lien, aren't I awesome? Mo Lien looked down at her with a smile. His treasure's eyes were practically shining when she talked about the talisman array that she created. It was obvious that she was very pleased with herself. But it was also true. It was not easy to become an Earth-rank talisman master at her age and create such a powerful teleportation talisman array. She was indeed extraordinary. If the little fellow had a tail behind her, it would definitely be wagging left and right. My Jojo is really amazing. Mo Lien reached out and pulled her to his side, rubbing her little face with his fingers. Arbor was a little happy. After thinking about it, he also felt that he was quite amazing. The teleportation talisman arrays that she created now could set directions. As long as the general direction was correct, the teleportation distance would not deviate too much. Lady Qiao raised her head and looked at him, her eyes sparkling as she said, "The teleportation talisman array made from this kind of jade talisman can be used up after replenishing its talisman energy. After resting for a day, it can be used again tomorrow." Therefore, she had prepared 3 sets of teleportation talisman arrays. If she could teleport up to 36 times in a row, she would probably reach the outskirts of Sovereign Capital. If she did not have enough teleportation talisman arrays, she could just run to Fish Orchid Planet and draw a few more sets. It was not difficult at all. With the talisman in hand, there was no need to worry about not being able to go and return quickly. Mo Lien was originally a bit gloomy, but when he heard Xiao Qiao's words, he immediately beamed with joy. That's right, under normal circumstances, even with the Crimson Firmament Blue Wave ship, it would still take 5 to 6 days to make a round trip. Jojo's talisman array was really wait a minute. Mo Lien blinked. Suddenly, she grabbed the little fellow's hand and asked in confusion, "Jojo, since the teleportation glyph array is so fast, why didn't we use the glyph array when we first came?" There were only 9 of them in their group, which was more than enough for a few teleportations. At most, he would reach the great forest of the north-facing forest and would not be able to tell the direction. If he traveled a little further, he would be able to save some time and wouldn't have to rush. Jojo-san turned around expressionlessly and faced his husband with the back of his head, showing an attitude that said, "I don't want to talk about it." Mo Lien held back her laughter and lowered her eyes slightly. His Qiao Qiao had most likely forgotten about this. There was no way to continue this topic. Mo Lien coughed softly and stepped forward as if nothing had happened. She reached out to hold the little fellow's hand again. "Jojo, then you should be back around this time tomorrow, right?" Arbor nodded calmly. "If nothing unexpected happens, I should be. Have Hui Feng bring some people back with you." Chapter 28:38. Arbor nodded and looked up at him. "It's fine. Those people probably can't do anything big. Burn down Kaidai Pavilion? That was perfect. After so many years, the tables, chairs, and cutlery inside Kaidai Pavilion were all worn out. They could take advantage of this opportunity to renovate everything. In any case, the little crown princess had plenty of money, so she didn't lack the loss of time and money to renovate Kaidai Pavilion." Mo Lien gave a and nodded with a grin. "You have to come back early. At the latest, you must come back at noon the day after tomorrow, understand?" The little fellow looked over curiously and stared at his beautiful phoenix eyes that were curved into crescents. She scrutinized him. "Are you hiding something from me?" "What could I be hiding?" Mo Lien pulled her into his embrace and nuzzled his head against hers. "I just miss you. You keep running away from me, and I get flustered when you run far away." Miss Qiao wanted to laugh, but she suppressed her smile with a serious expression. She raised her small hand and stroked his hair. "Be good in the academy. Don't always get into a dogfight with Duan Yu. After saying that, without waiting for the stiff-faced Prince Mo to react, she broke free from his embrace with a hearty laugh and called out to Huifeng, "Let's go, Huifeng." Duan Yu was walking over, and he was nearly blinded by the little lady's resplendent smile. His eyes seemed to be lit up by the sun, moon, and stars, and his rippling peach blossom eyes were brimming with smiles. "Where are you going, Jojo?" Jojo smiled. When she smiled, it was as if the first snow had scattered and the plum blossoms had bloomed. Her entire person radiated with radiant vitality, truly making people unable to shift their eyes away. "I'm going back for a bit. I'll be back tomorrow." The little lady waved her hand, and 24 jade talismans swiftly lined up in a row and circled around her. "Get along well with Lien, okay?" The little lady exhorted and received a muffled "oh" from Duan Yu. She then pulled Huifeng and disappeared from the teleportation talisman matrix. This move was truly a bit shocking. Although the little girl did not deliberately show this in front of others, there were quite a few people who saw the teleportation array light up and the little girl disappear. When Mu Xingqian ran over, his eyes involuntarily lit up as he stared at Duan Yu and asked, "Teleportation talisman matrix. Was Jojo using a teleportation talisman matrix just now?" That's right, that's right." When Duan Yu saw Mo Lien walking towards him, he pursed his lips in annoyance. Jojo left in such a hurry. "Are you going back alone?" Mo Lien nodded, and his gaze swept past his brother-in-law. Wasn't this brother-in-law a little too agitated these past few days? He raised his eyes and swept his gaze across the crowd. He only caught a glimpse of the corner of a red robe. It wasn't an illusion. Someone had been staring at them all this while. Huff, huff. Huff. Mu Rochuan ran so fast that after turning a corner and hiding under the eaves, she was still gasping for breath. What did she see? Teleportation glyph formation. It was a teleportation talisman matrix. Arbor actually knew how to draw a teleportation talisman matrix. Why? She didn't believe it, she didn't believe it. How could Arbor draw a teleportation talisman matrix that even she didn't know? Could it be that she wasn't the one who drew that teleportation talisman matrix? Then what kind of expert was guiding her behind the scenes to be able to casually gift her a teleportation talisman matrix? This was quite generous. Mu Rochuan kept gasping for breath. Chapter 28:39. She felt that the gloominess in her chest was about to burst out. At this time, a crisp laughter suddenly came from behind her. "Eldest Miss Mu, what's wrong?" Mu Rochuan abruptly turned her head like a thief, and her gaze met Shi Yongqian's. Why are you here?" "Heh, I followed you all the way here." "You were too focused on shock and defeat, right, so you didn't notice me all this time." Shi Yongqian chuckled. She was a blacksmith master, but her cultivation wasn't high. She definitely didn't have a share in the competition for the Sun-Moon Secret Realm spots this time. Today, she was only here to join in the fun and take a look at the top-ranked students in the academy. She wanted to see if there was anyone worthy of befriending. To her surprise, she saw the Little Stoics group. The Little Stoic was accompanied by Prince Mo, whose appearance was described as exquisite and unadorned, and she was truly too conspicuous. It was hard not to see her. She naturally noticed the Little Stoic leaving using the transportation formation just now. Of course, the things she paid attention to were even more than Mu Rochuan. Before this, her gaze had actually always been on young Sir Omega Kotoku. When she saw the way the Omega Kotoku gazed at the Little Stoic, her fingers dug into her palms until they bled. The second young Sir's gaze was truly too focused on the little girl, so focused that it made Shi Yongqian's heart ache. They were already engaged, yet he used that kind of affectionate gaze to look at another girl. This truly made her embarrassed and hateful to the extreme. The hatred in his heart towards the Little Stoic also increased by another level. Shi Yongqian's man, actually stared blankly at another girl's smile. What was there to look at? He couldn't even pull his gaze away. He even turned a deaf ear to her soft calls a dozen times by his ear. This feeling of her fiancé being right next to her but separated by thousands of mountains and rivers made Shi Yongqian feel a trace of despair. At this moment it was as if there were thousands of ants incessantly gnawing at her heart. It was so unbearable that she wanted to die. Meanwhile, eldest Miss Mu was completely stupefied and frightened by the transportation formation the little stoic used, but she, Shi Yongqian, wasn't. It was just a teleportation glyph array, but it scared Miss Mu to this extent. How ridiculous. No matter how powerful a talisman master was, it was impossible for him to surpass a person with the highest cultivation. In Shi Yongqian's opinion, being a talisman master was not a big deal. If you were to really fight with someone who had reached the god realm, the moment you opened the talisman, the opponent's divine power would have already hit you. You would definitely not be able to win. Moreover, talismans were consumables. How many talismans could a talisman master draw in a day? Even if he saved up for a year, it would only be enough for one battle, right? In Shi Yongqian's opinion, the little stoic who used the aura-concealing talisman was merely a little level 3 spiritual cultivator. She couldn't even surpass her cultivation. Wasn't the little stoic just a bit more external assistance? With His Highness the Crown Prince by her side, no one dared to bully her. With the title of the Crown Princess hanging on her body, everyone could only respect her and flatter her. When she fought with others, she would only summon her contracted beasts. Her contracted beast, Sand Scorpion, was much stronger than the contracted beasts of other clerics. She only had the ability to rely on external help or intimidate others. Could she really bring out her true strength? Shi Yongqian pursed her lips in disdain and glanced at Mu Rochuan, who seemed to have suffered a heavy blow. Chapter 2840. Shi Yongqian smiled and said, I received news that something happened at the little Crown Princess Kaidai Pavilion last night. She left in such a hurry. She probably went back to deal with this matter. Mu Rochuan's mind was in a bit of a daze. When she heard Shi Yongqian's words, her heart couldn't help but tremble. She returned to the imperial capital. Right. She should also return to the imperial capital. Not for anything else, but her heart was in a mess and she really wanted to confide in her mother. She was truly in a mess. She didn't even know if her heart was entangled by a mental demon. Since last night, her mind had been restless and she couldn't guide spiritual energy into her body to cultivate. If this continued, she would be crippled. No, she couldn't continue like this. Her mother was so intelligent and farsighted. She would definitely find a way to help her. Mu Rochuan also hurriedly turned around. You hate her, right? Shi Yongqian suddenly chuckled behind her. As if a thunderbolt had struck her head on a sunny day, Mu Rochuan's heart was in a complete mess. She turned around and shouted in a flustered and exasperated manner, No. I don't hate her. Why would I hate her? Arbor was just a wild child without parents since young. She had always been stranded in a damned place like the lower star field and cultivated until now. She was only a level 3 spirit master. She only had a stroke of good fortune and received some guidance from an expert. That's why she had such achievements in talismans today. She just had dog's hit luck. Yes, it was dog's hit luck. Arbor's life was generally very tragic. She didn't have a father, mother, or family to care for her. She must have suffered a lot growing up. How could she be mentioned in the same breath as a young miss of an aristocratic family like her? Why would she be jealous of a wild child without parents? Heh, what a joke. Mu Rochuan's eyes shot out a poisonous light, don't talk nonsense. Shi Yongqian, our friendship isn't deep. We can't open our hearts to each other. Don't try to trick me. I won't tell you anything. I won't. Shi Yongqian smiled. Her smile was very tranquil. I have no ill intentions towards you, young Miss Mu. Why do you have to put up a front in front of me? You just hate her, you hate her to death. Mu Rochuan staggered and leaned against the wall. She shook her head repeatedly. No, I didn't. She's my sister. Why would I hate her? I hate her for doing this, you just hate her. Shi Yongqian said harshly. You hate her for stealing all your glory the moment she came back. You hate her for forcing you and your mother to the edge of the cliff. You hate that her talisman skills have reached the acme of perfection, surpassing you, the eldest Mississippi. You hate her for taking away all of your brother's attention. Isn't that right? Shi Yongqian had observed Miss Mu more than once. She knew Mu Rochuan's mentality better than anyone else. This jealousy was very easy to understand. Miss Mu had grown up under the halo of the genius Miss Mu since she was born. And now, with Arbor's appearance, she was being compared to her again and again. No matter if it was appearance, identity, or innate talent in drawing talismans, this genius young miss had been defeated by Arbor. It would be strange if she wasn't jealous. Mu Rochuan staggered and almost fell to the ground. With your identity, isn't it the easiest way to get close to her? I have a medicine here that can make her disappear completely from the world without a trace. Shi Yongqian reached out and took out a small white porcelain bottle. She smiled at her, revealing her white teeth. Chapter 28:41. No. No. Mu Rochuan forcefully pushed her hand away and shouted harshly, Go away. I don't want your medicine. No, I won't harm her. I won't. She's my younger sister. My mother told me before that she hasn't had it easy all these years. I won't listen to you, an outsider, and harm our own family. Why scram? Scram. Mu Rochuan roared somewhat hysterically. I'm not jealous of her. I won't be jealous of her. She was the genius eldest miss in the eyes of the clan head and elders. Not long ago, several elders even praised her as the most outstanding talent of this generation of the Mu clan, and that she was even better than her brother, Mu Xingqian. If she wasn't a girl, she would be more than qualified to be the Mu clan's young master. Why would a genius like her be jealous of Arbor's fatherless wild child? It was simply laughable. Heh. Watching Mu Rochuan's fleeing figure, Shi Yongqian smiled faintly and said softly, Mu Rochuan, if you change your mind, you can come find me at any time to continue our collaboration. Mu Rochuan didn't reply at all and ran away like a madwoman. She returned to her small room and slammed the door shut. Then, she leaned against the door and panted heavily for a while. Only then did she take out 2 sets of transportation talisman matrices from her inner world with trembling hands. Transportation talisman matrices were the clan's most precious treasures. It was extremely difficult for the elders to draw them, so there were only a few sets of transportation talisman matrices in existence. Hers was a black-level transportation talisman matrix. It could transport a distance of about 10 kilometers at a time. She usually treasured it and couldn't bear to use it easily. But now, she couldn't care less. She had to go back and had to talk to her mother. In a flash, Mu Rochuan's figure disappeared from the room. Arbor teleported more than 30 times with Huifeng and Lie's group. By noon, they had already arrived at the outskirts of the imperial capital. Huifeng and the others couldn't help but admire their young crown prince consort to no end. Especially Huifeng, whose grin stretched to his ears. The little crown princess casually gave him a set of teleportation talisman arrays. She said that if he did not teleport more than 10 times a day, the talisman power inside would last him about a year. He was overjoyed. In the future, when he brought his brothers out to do things, it would save him a lot of trouble. He could even launch a surprise attack at any time. Just thinking about it made him happy. Everyone quickly changed into the spirit stallions provided by the little crown princess and rode towards the imperial capital. They only thought that the little crown princess had kept a lot of spirit stallions in the storage talisman in case of emergency. They did not know that Arbor had raised a lot of stallions in Paradise Planet. The journey back to the capital was as fast as lightning. It was only 30 miles away, and with the spirit stallion speed, it would take about half an hour to reach. Arbor never mistreated his subordinates. After entering Sovereign Capital, he didn't rush to Kaidai Loft to investigate. It just so happened that it was lunchtime, so he led the group to a random restaurant. The 10 or so people asked for a private room and sat around a large table to eat. When everyone was almost done eating, they heard someone making a ruckus downstairs. Quickly go take a look. Kaidai Loft's entrance is surrounded by people. So many people are here to demand an explanation. Wow, there's a show to watch. Hey, dear customers, settle the bill before you leave. The innkeeper signaled with his eyes and hurriedly had a few workers block the people who were rushing to leave. Chapter 28:42. Those people sulkily pursed their lips and muttered, "It's not like we'll steal your food money." They then took out money from their pockets and tossed it on the table before running off with the crowd. Arbor naturally heard the crowd's shouts downstairs. She knitted her brows and exchanged glances with Huifeng and the others. "Crown Princess, how about this subordinate go over and take a look first?" Arbor shook her head. "Let's go over together." After saying this, she called for the waiter and paid the bill before leading Huifeng and Li Ye's group toward Kaidai Veranda's entrance with the crowd. Li Yi stood next to the young crown princess the entire time. When people tried to squeeze forward, she expressionlessly stretched out her arm and forcefully pushed them aside. Two of the people she pushed were unscrupulous. They cursed, but Li Ye's hands were as fast as lightning as she chopped at their necks without another word. Everyone was extremely speechless. Those who originally wanted to squeeze forward didn't dare to do so when they saw Li Ye's valiant fighting strength and hastily retreated a few steps. "Be gentler," the young crown prince consort said with a serious expression. "Yes." Li Yi nodded in acknowledgement. Huifeng's mouth involuntarily twitched, and he silently led his group to follow behind the crown princess. When everyone arrived at Kaidai Veranda's entrance, they saw that it had already been completely surrounded by a sea of people. There was simply no place to put one's feet. 2 bamboo stretchers were placed in front of Kaidai Veranda's entrance, and the corpses on them had white cloth covering their faces. More than a dozen men and women knelt there and wailed, their cries uneven. Judging from their appearance and attire, they seemed to be the family members of a small family in the city, the kind that couldn't starve but didn't have much money on hand either. Arbor walked up, and Li Yi used her arm to push aside the people around her, protecting her as she walked forward. Their group moved like the wind, and they were all dressed in black. They looked very young, but their cultivations didn't seem to be weak. The little girl in the middle had exquisite features, but her eyes remained icy, cold, and her fiery red clothes were very eye-catching. Although the group did not speak much, everyone was very perceptive and moved to the sides. As long as some people walked in front of others, they would make others feel a strong pressure. This was the existence of aura. Now, everyone felt this kind of pressure from this young girl. As long as they weren't stupid, they were very perceptive and moved to the side. In the imperial capital, a single brick could kill 3 to 5 high-ranking officials and nobles. Everyone had really trained their eyesight to know who they could afford to offend and who they couldn't. Who dares to cause trouble in front of Kaidai Pavilion? Shopkeeper who walked out and frowned as he looked at the sobbing people kneeling at the entrance of the Kaidai Pavilion. These people should be the family members of the 2 guests who died in the accident yesterday. However, he had sent someone to contact the families of the 2 guests early in the morning and sincerely discussed the issue of compensation with them. Why did they come here to cause a ruckus? Master. You left in such a hurry and left such a big family behind. How are we supposed to live? An old woman wailed as she threw herself to the ground. She raised her face slightly, and her tears filled the deep gullies on her face. "Shopkeeper Hu." The little crown princess walked towards him and stood in front of them. Shopkeeper Hu was surprised and delighted. His furrowed brows relaxed slightly, and he hurriedly bowed in greeting. "Greetings, Crown Princess." Chapter 2843. Crown Princess. Several workers from Kaidai Veranda also hastily stepped forward to greet her. Only then did the surrounding crowd realize what was going on and hastily knelt down to pay their respects, not daring to act rashly. Even those who couldn't immediately recognize the little crown princess had heard of the little crown princess's terrifying method of angrily rebuking the temple's saintess. They acknowledged that they weren't as honorable as the temple's saintess. The crown princess even dared to beat up the saintess, so how could they dare to be impudent in front of the crown princess? Instantly, the surrounding clamor gradually quieted down. Aside from the two groups of family members who were still weeping incessantly, the onlookers all quieted down. Due to the lack of noise in the surroundings, the two groups of family members' wails also gradually quieted down. As the old woman in the lead cried, she sneaked glances at the expressionless little crown princess. Her appearance was rather comical due to her guilty conscience. Arbor didn't look at them as his gaze landed on shopkeeper Hu, who unfortunately died yesterday. It was landlord Li and boss Zhang. Shopkeeper Hu stepped forward and respectfully reported, when the commotion broke out, someone took advantage of the chaos and set a fire at the entrance. Arbor looked up at the half-ruined Kaidai veranda and nodded slightly. "How did you negotiate with them?" In response to the crown princess, "After this happened, I immediately sent people to these two families and negotiated a compensation of 100,000 spirit coins for each family. At the time, they readily agreed." He didn't expect that the two families would change their minds in just one morning. The one who howled the loudest was Boss Zhang's mother, old Madame Zhang. Her eyes darted around before she slapped her thigh and started crying. "They want to buy my son's life with just 100,000 spirit coins. This Kaidai veranda is truly undisciplined and out of control with the crown princess backing them up." Shopkeeper whose face flushed red. You. This shrew clearly didn't say this when she came to discuss this matter with them this morning. "Go invite Lord Chao here," Arbor said aloofly to Hui Feng, who was behind him. "Yes." Hui Feng immediately accepted the order and left. Everyone looked at each other in dismay, wondering if this Lord Chao was the governor, Chao Butu. "Take the Eastern Palace's token and head to the Ministry of Justice to invite Assistant Minister Zhou over. Also, bring those ruffians from yesterday over to me while you're at it." The little stoic then turned around to say to Li Yi. "Yes. Remember not to scare people," the little stoic instructed. Li Yi nodded. "Crown Princess, Li Yi understands." That little face was serious and unsmiling. She turned around and jumped onto the roof with a whoosh, disappearing after a few jumps. The capital governor's mansion was actually quite close to Changle Street. Even with Lord Chao's help, it only took the time it took for an incense stick to burn. During this time, Arbor had people bring out a few armchairs and help the elder sit down. At first, old Madame Zhang was unwilling. The little crown princess said coldly, "Old madam, you're already so old. It's not appropriate for you to sit on the cold ground and cry. Our Kaidai veranda is sincere in resolving this matter, so please cooperate with us. Crying, throwing a tantrum, and threatening to hang yourself won't solve any problems. I hope you understand that you're already so old. Even if you don't want face yourself, your descendants will still want face in the future when they live in the capital." Old Madame Zhang's complexion alternated between green and white when she heard this series of sarcastic words. Chapter 2844. 534 Slap you to death. When Chao Jiedo arrived, he saw a group of people crowding around Kaidai Pavilion's entrance. Squeezing in, he saw the crown princess sitting there expressionlessly. Behind her were several black-clothed youths standing ramrod straight behind the crown princess, each of them as upright as a pine tree. Chao Jieto hurriedly went forward to greet the crown princess. After that, the little crown princess gave him a friendly nod and pointed to the armchair at the side for him to sit down. Lord Chao knew that today's situation was getting more and more serious. They were probably waiting for someone to arrive. At this time, that Zhang family's old lady didn't dare to cry loudly anymore. Supported by her children, she sat on the armchair as if she was sitting on pins and needles. Her buttocks kept shifting here and there, secretly checking on the crown princess' expression from time to time. Ever since the little crown princess gave her a lukewarm scolding, she hadn't said a word. Although she was very young, the aura she exuded while sitting there didn't allow anyone to ignore her. After a short while, the Ministry of Justice's assistant minister, Zhou Cheng, led 7 to 8 people of all ages to Kaidai Pavilion's entrance. This humble official, Zhou Cheng, greets the crown princess. Official Zhou has worked hard. The little crown princess nodded expressionlessly, her gaze falling on the men and women strung together with torture instruments behind him. These are the people who attacked Kaidai Pavilion last night. Old Lady Zhang immediately jumped up from her armchair and raised her hand to slap a 7 to 8-year-old child's face. So it was you who committed the sin of trampling my son to death. Stop! Arbor shouted angrily. Li Yi immediately stepped forward and blocked the old lady's arm. The crown princess told you to stop. Didn't you hear? Old Lady Zhang almost fell to the ground from her shove, but was supported by her 2 sons behind her. Her wrinkled old face immediately revealed a resentful expression as she wailed, "Io! Kaidai Pavilion's boss is bullying people. Disrespectful elders, slap her." The little crown princess berated. Without another word, Li Yi raised her hand and slapped the old lady's face. Old Madame Zhang was stunned by this crisp, "pa" sound. Everyone opened their mouths in surprise. Old Madame Zhang's 2 sons were originally supporting their mother. Seeing that Li Yi was so ruthless, they wanted to go up and block her. Who knew that Li Ye's movements were so fast that a slap landed on old Madame Zhang's face? The heavy voice caused the hearts of the 2 to tremble slightly. The timid younger son immediately regretted following his mother to the entrance of Kaidai brothel to cause trouble. No matter what, Kaidai restaurant was the property of the crown princess. Now, the person they were going against was the high and mighty crown princess. If things went wrong, they might really end up worse off. Madame Li was originally a timid person. This time, she was willing to come with old Madame Zhang. To a large extent, she was encouraged by old Madame Zhang. Now that she saw old Madame Zhang suffer in the hands of the little crown princess, she didn't dare to speak. Old Madam, according to the law, if you behave in such a manner in front of the crown princess, you will be caned 10 times as a warning to others. Li Yi coldly said. The crown princess has been patient with you on account of your age. I'll have to trouble you to be tactful. Old Madame Zhang was beaten until she couldn't make a sound. Her eyes were filled with indignation as she muttered a few words. When she met the little crown princess' icy eyes, she was beaten until she couldn't speak. Chapter 28:45. Without the old madam's noisy voice, the scene quiets down again. Arbor indifferently turns his head to look at the 7 to 8 ragged people and asks coldly, "Shopkeeper who, what was the situation yesterday?" The 7 to 8 people in front of him, 2 old and 1 young, 3 young men and 2 middle-aged women, did not look like a mob that would commit murder and arson. Replying to the crown princess. Shopkeeper who recalls for a moment and says clearly, "Yesterday, the Fuxing Lu on the next street was giving out black beans. That's why a lot of people went to the Fuxing Lu to watch the show. Other than a few old customers, there really aren't many people who came to our Kaidai veranda." Shopkeeper who thinks for a moment, then points at old Madame Zhang and says, "That boss Zhang is the second boss of the Fuxing Lu, that Fuxing Lu is the property of the 3 Zhang brothers. These three Zhang brothers are usually stingy, but who knows what's wrong with them yesterday that they actually thought of giving out free black beans to the beggars. The funniest thing is, it said that this family made such a big fuss, but in the end, they only gave out a dozen liters of black beans. The beggars queued up for a long time, but in the end only 40 to 50 people received the black beans. Recently, there have been quite a lot of refugees from Xiang City. Shopkeeper Hu says, when Fuxing Lu gave out the black beans, we thought that they would be able to help the victims, but who knew that this matter was not handled properly. The two Zhang brothers who were ridiculed by Shopkeeper Hu both have a black face, looking like they are angry but do not dare to say anything. Do you think that they are willing to fork out money to help the victims? Isn't it because they want to gain a good reputation and at the same time, attract some business for their own store? It's so hard to do business these days. How can they not be envious when they see Kaidai Veranda's business flourishing across the street? Arbor glances at them, then turns to look at Shopkeeper Hu, and then. The three brothers of the Zhang family fished for fame and compliments. They did a half-assed job and attracted a lot of beggars. In the end, only a portion of them received food. The rest of the beggars naturally complained. These people were wandering around the next street begging. They even attracted the attention of the local authorities. The capital governor nodded and jumped up to testify, that's right. I received news that a large number of refugees were wandering around Changle Street, so I sent Wu Xiaoyin to drive them away. To put it bluntly, Changle Street was the main traffic artery. This street was filled with nobles and nobles. How could they allow so many beggars to occupy it? This was related to the capital's political achievements. If the entire capital were to be flooded with refugees, it wouldn't look good. Arbor nodded and asked Shopkeeper Hu, what did you do after that? These friends are beggars who left the large group and wandered into the vicinity of our Kaidai pavilion. I saw that they were having a hard time making a living, so I decided to be kind. Shopkeeper Hu stole a glance at the young crown princess. He was afraid that the crown princess would think that he was a busybody, so he braced himself and said, so I gave them some leftovers from the shop. This grandpa is a good person. At this moment, the boy among the mob couldn't help but shout, he's a good person. An old woman beside the boy tried to push her grandson away, using her eyes to signal him to stop talking. Arbor glanced at them, then turned to Shopkeeper Hu and said, continue. Shopkeeper Hu hurriedly continued, Boss Zhang and his friend, Landlord Li, came to drink and sat at the entrance. Chapter 2846. Not long after, Miss Kai Xiu hurriedly rushed over with a letter in her hand. Shopkeeper Hu's tone became hurried, Crown Princess, this lowly one really doesn't know how this matter turned out like that. It was as if it all exploded in an instant. There. It was them, it was those two. Shopkeeper Hu pointed at the two strong young men and shouted, those two suddenly broke into Kai Dai Pavilion and shouted loudly. Then, they smashed everything and set fire. Actually, there weren't many people in the store at that time. Most of the people had escaped when those two people were shouting. Boss Zhang and Landlord Li were clearly sitting at the door. How could they not escape? Shopkeeper Hu was puzzled. It was just that it was very chaotic at that time. While he was looking for people to deal with those two boorish men, he was also evacuating the customers. He really didn't notice Boss Zhang and Landlord Li. Who would have thought that when he turned around, he would see the two of them lying in the fire at the door. At that time, the fire had already burned the two of them. They were lying at the door, unaware of what was going on. There were also a few people standing beside them who didn't know what to do. Shopkeeper Hu pointed at the boy, the old man, the two women, and the man. We didn't trample them to death, we didn't trample them to death. The old woman, the boy, and the woman hurriedly cried out. One of the strong young men among them hurriedly knelt down and kowtowed, Crown Princess is wise. These two are my parents. This is my nephew, my widowed sister-in-law, and my eldest sister. At that time, we were indebted to the old shopkeeper's kindness and rewarded our family with food. How could we do something like repay kindness with enmity and implicate the shopkeeper? That's right, that's right. The old woman also cried. We had been sitting behind the stone railing at Kai Dai Pavilion. When the fire started, we were eating. When I saw that the fire was so big, I quickly asked my son to go and help. When the family ran to Kai Dai Pavilion's door, that boss Zhang was just about to run out. We hurriedly reached out to grab him. Who knew that he would suddenly fall down in front of us? Shopkeeper Hu nodded repeatedly. That's right, Boss Zhang and Landlord Li were originally sitting at the door. If they wanted to run, they could actually run very fast. But I don't know why, the rumor of someone being trampled to death was also spread last night. Shopkeeper Hu thought for a while and said, I don't know who spread this rumor. Everyone is saying that the Kaidai Pavilion was attacked by a mob and someone was trampled to death. Arbor roughly understood the situation and pointed at the two people covered by the white cloth. Open it. When old Madame Zhang heard this, she immediately disagreed. What do you want? Didn't you bring her here to let people see her? Arbor stabbed her coldly. If you didn't want people to see her, why did you bring her here? We have to get to the bottom of this before we can talk about compensation. Whether or not it's related to the Kaidai veranda is still unknown. Just by looking at the family's untruthful appearance, Arbor felt that the cause of their deaths was suspicious. Old Madame Zhang was choked by the little stoic's words. Her heart was stifled with displeasure, and her face turned the color of a pig. Huifeng didn't care whether old Madame Zhang was happy or not. He directly walked up and pulled the white cloth from both sides, revealing two faces that were 60% to 70% charred. Wah! The onlookers nearly vomited from disgust. The group of people continuously retreated a few steps. Wait for me, I'll say it's over. Chapter 28:47. This burning was too disgusting. They fell face down in the fire. Arbor walked forward expressionlessly. He first squatted beside Boss Zhang to take a look, then walked to Squire Li's side. That's right. Shopkeeper Hu nodded. They weren't burned to death, nor trampled to death. Arbor said coldly, they were poisoned to death. Impossible. Madame Zhang shrieked. They were trampled to death. They were trampled to death. It's your Kaidai brothel's poor management that caused the mob to attack and implicate the guests. Whether it's true or not, wouldn't it be clear if we invite a coroner here? Arbor said coldly, why didn't you let the authorities investigate your son's death? Why did you silently carry him back? Can you tell us about it? Madame Zhang's expression changed slightly. The Zhang brothers' expressions also became unnatural. Probably only your Zhang family knows the truth of the matter. As they spoke, two deft coroner had already been invited over. They went forward to examine the two corpses, then stood up and cupped their hands. The surface of the corpses was severely burned. Ordinary flames wouldn't be able to burn them to this extent in a few minutes, so this subordinate speculates that this should be a 6th-level spiritual fire or above. Assistant Minister Zhou of the Ministry of Justice slapped the stool. In other words, a cultivator with profound cultivation secretly added fuel to the fire when the two boorish men were setting it on fire. There was an uproar in the surroundings. They only felt that it was somewhat inconceivable. Who would do this to Kaidai brothel? Who would send people to cause trouble and secretly add fuel to the fire to deal a heavy blow to them? The corpses didn't show any signs of being trampled. Their faces were burned beyond recognition by the 6th-level spiritual fire. As for the true cause of death, this subordinate's lack of talent and knowledge actually couldn't discern it. The coroner's face was somewhat ashamed as he spoke. The poison they were poisoned with is rather special. It's normal that you couldn't discern it. The young crown princess said faintly. She glanced at Madame Zhang, whose expression was unsightly. Take back what you said before. What? Old Madame Zhang was very nervous. You said that Kaidai Brothel's poor management caused the mob to attack and implicate the customers, Arbor said coldly. I want you to tell everyone that there is no such thing. My son is dead now, it's a fact. Old Madame Zhang tried to argue, even if he wasn't killed by the mob, they are not mobs. Arbor interrupted her coldly. Apologize immediately. Old Madame Zhang shrunk her neck, her old face somewhat embarrassed. I just made a slip of the tongue. Impudent. Huifeng shouted angrily. Old madam, you've repeatedly flaunted your seniority and contradicted the crown princess. I'm going to charge you with the crime of disrespect. When old Madame Zhang's two sons heard this, they immediately panicked. They were more cultured than the old lady and knew that the law clearly stated that the crime of great disrespect could implicate the entire family. If it was not handled well, it could even implicate the entire family. The two of them hastily knelt down and begged for forgiveness. Crown Princess, please forgive us. Old mother is old, and her mind is muddled. Please, Crown Princess, don't fuss over this with her. Arbor's small face was cold as she took out a jade talisman from her pocket. Her chilly voice floated next to their ears. Presumably, you won't tell the truth, so I have no choice but to ask your second boss to come over and clarify things. Chapter 2848. What? Everyone revealed an expression of disbelief. The little crown princess held a jade slip in her hand. What was the meaning of this? A light flashed on the jade slip, and a ray of light burrowed into Boss Zhang's charred body. In less than a second, everyone saw a faint, fluttering shadow float up from Boss Zhang's charred body. It was enveloped by a light barrier, and it looked around in confusion. Mommy! It really is a soul. This isn't a ghost spirit, right? Everyone was shocked and hurriedly retreated. How is that possible? Ghost spirits are born from the resentment of heaven and earth. They're formed from the accumulated resentment of a person's soul that didn't disperse after death. Right. I heard that they carry the power of evil Yin. This Boss Zhang's soul clearly doesn't have any power. It should be an ordinary soul. Everyone felt more at ease after hearing this explanation, but they still couldn't help but move closer to the center of the crowd. The little crown princess was truly godly. She could summon Boss Zhang's ghost with a jade slip. This move was truly too masterful. Not only were the onlookers frightened, but the Zhang family was also quite frightened. Old Madame Zhang nearly fainted from fright, and she pulled her two sons back several steps. She looked at the indistinct shadow in shock and cried out in a trembling voice, "My son, is that you?" The shadow clearly didn't dare to look at anyone and only stared at Sir Jojo standing in front of him. His face was ghastly pale, and he knelt down when he saw Sir Jojo. He repeatedly kowtowed and cried, "Fairy, fairy, spare my life. Fairy, fairy, spare my life." He was currently in a very weak soul state, so the pressure she gave him was very strong. He felt that if this cold-faced little fairy gave him a strand of pressure, his soul would scatter and completely disappear from this world. Sir Jojo expressionlessly said to Huifeng, "Ask him why he went to the Kaidai brothel last night. Make him tell you everything." Huifeng immediately nodded and inwardly walked forward while stifling his laughter. He knew that the little crown princess naturally couldn't see any ghosts. Could it be that she couldn't even see the soul remembrance she attracted? But this time, Huifeng really guessed wrong. Mr. Jojo could not see the ghost that was surrounded by foul air, but she could still see the faint soul. However, after talking so much earlier, she was too lazy to talk to a soul. Boss Zhang's soul confessed everything with just a few words from Huifeng. As it turned out, this brat had planned this all along. He was envious and jealous of Kai Dai Restaurant's good business. The reason why he went to Kai Dai restaurant for dinner last night was to cause trouble for Kai Dai restaurant. He had a bag of medicinal powder in his pocket and invited Stewardly. He wanted to drug Stewardly and then say that the food in Kai Dai restaurant was not clean. He wanted to frame Kai Dai restaurant. Xiao Mu understood now. No wonder the Zhang family's expressions were so uncomfortable when she mentioned poisoning just now. It turned out that the trick of a thief shouting, "Stop thief," had been exposed. No, that's impossible. That's not poison. Old Madame Zhang hastily shouted, "Don't accuse me wrongly. My son didn't bring poison over at all." Arbor waved her hand and dismissed Boss Zhang's white shadow. The old madam panicked. Where did you take my son? Ah. You didn't make his soul scatter and scatter, right? Arbor glanced at her coldly. He's not worth dirtying my hands for. Chapter 2849. Assistant Minister Zhou stood up at the right time. He pointed at the boy's family and waved his hand. Release them. As for the members of the Zhang family, they'll be locked up in the prison of the Ministry of Justice for the time being. We'll deal with them after the case is cleared. Immediately, servants came forward and unlocked the shackles on the old woman and the others. The boy's family immediately shed tears of gratitude. The old woman thanked them profusely, and the whole family stood up, their faces filled with joy. As for the Zhang clan, they were all stunned. Assistant Minister Zhou actually said that he wanted to put all of them in jail and deal with them later. What was the meaning of this? They didn't do anything at all. Why did they have to be imprisoned? Old Madame Zhang immediately sat down on the ground, slapping her thighs as she wailed, "You bunch of bastards, why do you have to wrongly accuse our Zhang family? Put all of us in jail. What did we do?" The little stoic's gaze landed on elderly Madame Zhang, and she said coolly, "You can howl a bit louder." Old Madame Zhang's voice choked, and then her face changed. She cried and shouted, "I really can't live anymore. I'm already so old, but I still have to go through the pain of being imprisoned. I'm suffering. When the two sons of the Zhang family heard this, they also surrounded the old lady and cried bitterly. Men and women gathered in a circle, crying so loudly that half of the street was alarmed. Arbor stared coldly at the group of clowns and remained unmoved. When old Madame Zhang saw that something was wrong, she quickly knelt on the ground and begged Arbor, "Crown Princess, please forgive me. Crown Princess, please forgive me. I was blinded by lard and blinded by money. That's why I allowed my second son to do such a disgraceful thing. Now, my second son has already received the punishment he deserved. He is already dead. This matter should end here. I hope that the Crown Princess will be magnanimous and forgive our Zhang family's mistakes." She really regretted it now. If she had known that things would turn out like this and that she wouldn't be able to get any benefits, she wouldn't have made a fuss in the first place. Wouldn't it be better for her to get 100,000 spirit coins as compensation and live happily? The little stoic gazed icily at the elderly lady, her voice frigid. "Tell me, who came to your house today and who made you come to Kaidai brothel to cause trouble?" Even at this point, the old lady still dared to set a trap for her with her words. It was as if she wasn't magnanimous enough for not letting the Zhang family off today. She was being too calculative, wasn't she? Old Madame Zhang cried out tearfully, "No one has come to our Zhang family." The little stoic harumphed coldly and turned to say to Assistant Minister Zhou, "This old shrew is full of lies. Not a single word is true. I feel that locking her up for a year and a half won't make her realize her mistake." Assistant Minister Zhou understood the meaning of the song and immediately understood. He nodded in agreement and said, "The Zhang family poisoned and set fires. Their crimes are too numerous to be recorded. This humble official also feels that the Zhang family absolutely cannot be dealt with lightly. This matter is of great importance and must be reported to His Majesty." When old Madame Zhang heard that this matter was going to be reported to His Majesty, how could it be settled peacefully? She couldn't help but tremble in fright, and her eyes were about to pop out. She hastily kowtowed and admitted her mistake. No, don't. Chapter 2850. This incident was originally caused by my second son, and now he wasn't elderly lady too naive to want to push all the blame onto a dead person. The little stoic coldly interrupted her. So what if he's dead? Just because he's dead doesn't mean that this incident didn't happen. If it weren't for this crown princess rushing back to deal with it in time, then Kaidai Pavilion's reputation would have been utterly destroyed. Not only that, if she didn't deal with this matter properly, the Eastern Palace's reputation would also be tarnished. Arbor felt that there was definitely a mastermind behind this incident. Moreover, 2.5 of that elderly woman's words were untruthful, so how could she easily believe them? She had to make this shrew reveal who the mastermind behind this incident was. Elderly lady felt that the young crown princess's expression was truly too icy, heartless, and arrogant, but she couldn't do anything about it. Currently, the crown princess had the Zhang family's weakness in her hands. If the crown princess didn't want to be kind, an elderly lady from a small wealthy family like her definitely wouldn't be able to contend against her. Elderly Lady Zhang steeled her heart and secretly peeked at her 2 sons next to her. However, there was a bit of terror on eldest Zhang's face. Eldest Zhang shook his head at his old mother. Although this movement was very slight, it was clearly seen by the young crown princess. The young crown prince consort swept a cold glance at the eldest son of the Zhang family before turning her gaze back to the Zhang family's old matriarch. If you're willing to reveal the mastermind's identity and honestly explain this matter to me, perhaps your entire family can still survive. Otherwise, I believe you won't want to experience this crown princess's methods. These words were very serious, and elderly Lady Zhang was completely stupefied. She didn't expect that just framing Kaidai Pavilion would escalate to this extent and implicate the entire family's lives. As expected, this little malignant star with vicious methods wasn't to be trifled with. Eldest Zhang gritted his teeth and hastily defended himself. Crown Princess, this matter is indeed my second brother's fault. He brought the bag of medicinal powder to Kai Dai restaurant to eat and used this opportunity to tarnish Kai Dai restaurant's reputation. This will definitely affect the reputation of the Crown Princess and the Crown Prince. But my second brother is already dead. What he meant was that Boss Zhang had already shot himself in the foot. Crown Prince Consort, how could you still cling on to this matter and not let it go? Wasn't this a little too unforgiving? The noodle vendor sneered, your whole family is struggling with this problem. I'll tell you one more time. If I, the Crown Princess, had not handled this matter in time, I'm sure you all know what kind of impact this matter would have on the Eastern Palace. That doesn't mean that everything will be over once he's dead. The young Crown Princess stared at the Zhang family with a cold gaze. He was dead, but the matter wasn't over yet. Arbor wanted everyone to know that anyone who messed with her would have to pay the price. The Kaidai Pavilion is a small matter, but the Crown Prince's reputation is important. Lord Zhou, tell them what the punishment for slandering the Crown Princess, tarnishing the Eastern Palace's reputation, and attempting to disrespect the Crown Prince should be. Assistant Minister Zhou hurriedly stepped forward with a serious expression on his old-fashioned face. Replying to the Crown Princess, those who tarnished the Eastern Palace's reputation and attempted to defame the Crown Prince and the Crown Princess should be executed according to the law. Those who committed serious crimes can be sentenced to 9 generations of their family. Elderly Lady Zhang's face paled as she collapsed to the ground. Eldest Zhang was so frightened that he staggered. Chapter 2851. When they heard that they were going to be imprisoned and might even be beheaded, they were scared out of their wits. Boss Zhang was a bit dumbfounded as he hastily knelt on the ground and begged for mercy. He kept shouting, Crown Princess, please be magnanimous and forgive us this time. It's this one's family that is short-sighted and unwilling to accept the fact that Kaidai Veranda's business is booming. That's why we thought of such an absurd method to take advantage of Kaidai Veranda. We didn't want to offend Your Highness the Crown Prince and Crown Princess. Boss Zhang said in fear and trepidation. Shopkeeper Wu's eyes burned and his veins throbbed as he listened on the side. Because Kaidai Veranda's business was booming, you coveted it and acted to destroy it. You wanted to use this as a pretext to slander them. The main reason was that Kaidai Veranda's business was too good. Ever since Arbor had taken out the holy rice and fruits and vegetables filled with spirit energy, Kaidai Veranda's business had risen steadily. The prices of Kaidai Veranda's dishes were already extremely high to begin with, and the prices of the new holy rice and spirit vegetables had reached a hair-raising level. This instantly attracted the attention of the surrounding restaurants. Actually, it wasn't just Boss Zhang's family that had sent people to Kaidai Veranda to inquire about the situation. In reality, there were many restaurants in the surrounding area that had sent their waiters to Kaidai Veranda to secretly investigate. But the results of their investigations were all consistent. Kaidai Veranda's new dishes, whether it was the holy rice or the special spirit vegetables, were all limited in supply. There were even a few times when customers almost fought over a plate of holy rice. This kind of matter was very strange. If Kaidai Veranda's business had been booming in the past, then it had been booming, but it hadn't been this popular. But the waiters that the bosses had sent out hadn't been able to find any clues. In the end, one of the insiders had pitted them and told them. It turned out that a cultivator of the 7th level of the spirit realm had eaten an extremely expensive meal of holy rice at the Kaidai Pavilion not long ago. He'd advanced in level that night and had been unusually excited. He'd spread the news to his friends and family. Therefore, this matter had become more and more miraculous through word of mouth. Now, everyone knew that Kaidai Veranda's holy rice was very helpful to cultivation. Because that practitioner had been stuck at the 7th level of the spirit realm for who knows how many years, he had thought that he would never be able to break through this realm in his lifetime. However, he had unexpectedly advanced just like that. This caused him to be wild with joy, and it once again broadened his horizons. He realized that there was no end to cultivation in this world. You don't know what will happen in the next second. This made his stagnant life suddenly rise and fall. This person felt that perhaps his cultivation base could really be improved, so he planned to buy more holy rice from Shopkeeper Hu at a sky-high price. However, Shopkeeper Hu spread out his hands, indicating that he couldn't buy it even if he had the money. The holy rice that Arbor had given him was only enough to feed 30 people. After these days of consumption, it had long been used up. Therefore, the last few bowls of holy rice were sold at sky-high prices. A bowl of holy rice that cost 30,000 was sold for 180,000. After the news spread to the various restaurant owners, how could they still sit still? All of them jumped to their feet. What kind of sky-high price was this? How could it be sold for 180,000? Their small restaurants didn't even make 180,000 in a year. How could this be? This was a special product. This was simply robbery. Chapter 2852. The news spread like wildfire. Everyone was saying that Kaidai Veranda's holy rice paired with spirit vegetables could increase one's cultivation level and aid in making breakthroughs. As a result, the entire sovereign capital was in an uproar. Many patriarchs of aristocratic families were racking their brains to buy this holy rice. Unfortunately, even Shopkeeper Hu didn't have any stock of this holy rice on hand. Not only that, several family clans had secretly sent people to Kaidai Veranda to gather information. They wanted to uncover the secret of the holy rice. But to their disappointment, they found nothing. Kaidai Veranda's daily supply of fruits and rice was basically depleted. Even if there was some residue left, they could not find anything amiss after secretly investigating it. Everyone returned empty-handed, but they were even more curious about the holy rice, spirit vegetables, and fruits. Family patriarch Long, who had been stuck in his cultivation realm for several years, was extremely curious about the limited offerings of Kaidai Veranda. However, there was nothing he could do about it. He had repeatedly tried to purchase the holy rice, but was told that it was out of stock. The repeated requests only made his heart itch even more. Kaidai Veranda's business was even more prosperous than before. Arbor lowered her head to glance at the Zhang family. She pursed her lips and asked coldly, "Who taught you to move a corpse here and cry?" Granny Zhang kowtowed. This time, she was not faking her tears. She was truly regretting her actions. "Crown Princess, it's my fault. I was blinded by greed and wanted to scam Kaidai Veranda. I'll tell you everything. Someone did come to our Zhang family and wanted us to move Er's corpse to Kaidai Veranda's entrance to continue causing a ruckus. That person was wearing a Fua mask and sounded like a middle-aged man. However, from my decades of experience, that person was definitely a woman disguised as a man." Arbor coldly glanced at Granny Zhang. Old Madam wailed as she wailed, "Crown Prince Consort, this old woman has told you everything she knows without reserve. I implore you to let us off this once." Arbor did not say a word. Instead, Assistant Minister Zhou commanded more than a dozen strong guards to step forward and arrest the Zhang family. They placed the shackles that were originally placed on the boy's family onto them. Arbor did not say a word until the Zhang family was dragged away by Assistant Minister Zhou. It was only after the Zhang family's wailing and fussing faded away that Xiao Mu coldly glanced at the crowd and stated dryly, "This time, Kaidai Pavilion suffered a fire, so it needs half a month to repair. Kaidai Pavilion will reopen in half a month, and on that day, it will provide at least 3 new specially supplied items. The quantity is limited, the highest bidder wins." After dropping the news, Arbor didn't wait for the crowd's reaction before leading his men into Kaidai Pavilion. Everyone was stopped outside by shopkeeper Hu and the others. When everyone heard that Kaidai Pavilion was going to get more than 3 types of special supplies in half a month, they were excited and emotional. There were even more people who had come to inquire about the news. One after another, they ran out from the crowd and returned to their respective clans to report the news to their respective clan leaders. In a room in the backyard of Kaidai Pavilion, Arbor sat in front of Kai Xiu's bed. After taking her pulse, he didn't speak for a long time. He kept silent, and his face was not good. Huifeng cautiously asked, "Crown Princess, is Kai Xiu's injury very serious?" Arbor shook his head. "She can be treated." Although Kai Xiu's burns were serious, she guaranteed that she would be able to heal her to her original state. "However, when I'm done, I'll end it."